And we're live? Question mark? And we're live. And we're live. And we're live. Hello, 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 hello. 1 minute late. You guys weren't even here. I was waiting for comments. I was waiting for people to join the chat, and no one was here. If anything, you guys are late. Hello, hello, howdy. Hang on, let me get the streaming sorted. Hello, if I sound a bit different, it was suspiciously quiet this time. Yes. Okay, so if I do sound a bit different, it is in fact because I have a new mic, and you and me, all of us together, we are going to be spending a little bit of time here configuring it and making sure that I sound not too quiet, because that is something that I have noticed with this mic in particular. It is in fact a lapel mic. And I got it because it has very good around outside sound muffling, which is great for me because I have to record in rather large rooms, and the room that I'm moving to in a month or so is going to be even bigger, and it's going to have even more like reverb and noise and outside sounds. So I got a lapel mic hoping that that would make things easier, and it comes with automatic sound muffling, surround sound. You know what I mean. However, it is a bit quieter. What's your broadcasting software? OBS? Yes, it is. OBS indeed. Give me a sec. Let's see. Okay. Over here at Europe, we are on fire. Oh no. I have heard. Hang on, let me start the music up as well, actually. I was debating, I completely forgot if I tend to have music playing during the reading streams. I can't remember even a little bit. So I suppose I'll put it down a little bit quieter than usual, just to help balance it to my current mixing? Question mark? I don't know any of the terminology. I'm very foolish. So please let me know if it's too loud compared to how I sound vocally. How is winter there in South Africa? Is it snowing too? Not yet. We keep waiting for... I think that might be a bit too loud, hey? It's not started snowing yet. I think it'll snow maybe next month. At least I'm hoping. If it does, then I might go and visit the mountains and go see some snow, because it's been a very, very long time since I last saw snow. After I get off work, I can send my mic filter set up in OBS to your Discord. That would be very nice. Thank you. Let's see. Did you send the heat wave over? Hey, listen, the heat wave wasn't even too bad when it was summer here for me, okay? If anything, the weather's getting milder the more to the far north and far south that you get, I think. I could be very wrong. Maybe it's completely different in the far north, but it feels like here things are getting a little milder and a lot wetter. Like a lot more rain. Snow in Africa, yeah. We have some very nice mountains and some very nice highlands. In fact, that's what a lot of Lesotho, that's its major tourism attraction, is that it has snow every winter. If you don't know, Lesotho is a country inside of South Africa. It's 30°C here? Ah, that's fine. That's just summer. That's just what summer's supposed to feel like. It is. I am enjoying the image that I've got for the stream. I do feel very cozy. It is perfect winter. This is in fact a blanket that I do own in real life. It is my favorite blanket. I've had it for years. Actually, I gotta wrap myself around. Hang on. My creaky old chair. Okay. And now I'm wrapped in a blanket. See, we're all good. We're all fine. Let's see. Okay. It's 14 here and -9 in some places of Brazil. Dang. That's lovely. I guess the snows down in Africa. I bless the snows down in Africa. I'm pretty sure there's always snow in some places in Africa. Yeah, we've got our fair share of very high mountains. Let's see. I mean, in the whole continent. It is a very big continent. It's been storming out this way, which is good. Too many wildfires. Oof. That's horrific. Yeah. I am very cozy as well. Oh yeah, I'm sure if you're living in the heat waves, it's not very nice to hear that I'm wrapping myself in a blanket and getting all cozy. But don't worry, it's fine. I think halfway through the stream we'll have a hot chocolate break, and I can take you with me because I got the lapel mic. Let's see. Oh, I'm very happy to have you here telling stories in the middle of winter. Oh, thank you, Phoenix. That's very, very kind. Okay. If you have somehow clicked on the stream without seeing any of the titling or thumbnailing or the book cover that I have hovering in the air next to me, we are going to be reading Wuthering Heights. Now, Wuthering Heights is a novel that is, at least in my copy, about 400, just short of 400 pages long. So we're definitely not going to be finishing it today. But I thought it would be fun to read the start of it and just sort of get a feel for the way that it's written, the style of the narrative, the different characters involved, and sort of just enjoy the well, the writing of a Victorian novel. Emily Brontë is a very, very famous female novelist from the Victorian era. The Brontë sisters, in fact, I believe they were all novelists in their own right. Yeah, and very talented family, made a lot of very famous books. Don't ask me to name any of them right now. I will admit romance is not exactly my genre of choice. So this is something that I'm sort of stepping into at the same time as you guys. I have read the first few chapters of Wuthering Heights, but I haven't read the whole thing through, and I also haven't seen the movie that came out recently, so I'm kind of going into this blind, and if any of you want to tell me that I'm being very silly and I've missed everything, and I don't understand anything, that's also okay as well. The amount of times I had to say Heathcliff in 6th grade English class till I finally managed to get the pronunciation right. Oh no. The South Americans and South Africans are enjoying a colder environment. They stole the cold from us. It's our turn with the cold, okay? Mom said it's our turn with the winter time. And I'm going to enjoy it. Speaking of the thumbnail, how does one have doomed Yuri that isn't gay? So I don't know if you know this, right? So this is something I've only recently come across. It's this very strange sort of merging of two genres, right? So you have your Yuri and you have your yaoi. Now, what I've come to understand is that there is this abstract splicing of the two genres where instead of it being yaoi or Yuri, it is a third thing, which is a relationship between a man and a woman. Now hear me out. I know it sounds a bit out there. Apparently, there is an even smaller subgenre of this existing genre wherein these, as I believe they are called, heterosexual relationships are in fact doomed in the same way that Yuri is often doomed in fiction. Now, I myself have never come across something like this. But I'm hoping some of you may be familiar with it. Yuri is the frame of reference for Hannah, I suppose. Hey. Just because you're right. No romantical kissing. It's called a tragic romance. I recall the movie version got into a bit of hot water. They made Heathcliff whiter. Yes, so Heathcliff's... So, okay, this is something I'm also going to have to watch out for in my reading. There may be some... If you aren't aware, in some of the previous Victorian novels and novelettes that we've read on stream, there have been some unfortunate references to groups of people that have been not incredibly flattering, and there have been some unfortunate slurs. And I imagine this is going to be quite similar because Heathcliff is very racially ambiguous in the original text. I believe he is referred to as multiple different inflammatory uh, ways, but none of them, all of them are different. So all of them are used to refer to different groups of people. I think one point he is referred to as a... I do have to think if I'm allowed to say. He's referred to as a gypsy. Whereas in another part of the novel, he is referred to as something entirely different that is not, in fact, from the same group as what he was called earlier. So the actual race of Heathcliff is incredibly ambiguous. He's just referred to as darker skinned. So that is, I believe, why the movie was received relatively poorly. Or at least one of the reasons, was because Heathcliff was played by... oh, dang, and that's an actor I actually know the name of. Never mind. He was played by someone who did not fit that description. Which is a choice, I suppose. There are other things that I believe people had complaints with in terms of like the writing, the story structure, the sort of departure from historical accuracy for the sake of the visuals, but that was one of the concerns. Like I said, I haven't watched the movie, but by God, I'll read the drama around it. Why do you always choose these Victorian era books, and why do they always win the polls? Because they are all copyright free. Unfortunately, I cannot read Twilight because Twilight is very, very copyrighted, and it's very illegal to share any of the text verbally or through print. However, if you wait long enough for something to enter the public domain, for example, a book that was published in 1847, you are in the clear. And you cannot be hurt by the very big scary companies with way more money than you. So you see. Yeah. The prime comedy is Hannah sweating bullets at certain words that are now slurs. That's the thing. It's like, I'm also a little bit out of touch in terms of like what is considered an inflammatory term, because I do read a lot of older books, so I will just kind of read stuff, not realize, keep going with my life, and then I believe when we read through the Book of Fairy Tales, there were 2 instances of that, with the mechanical bird story, as well as the last story that we read. I forget the name of it. To refer to a bundle of sticks and to refer to a group of people originating from China specifically. So I never intend it nefariously, and it is deeply unfortunate, and I do try to dodge it every single chance that I can. It is interesting to see the cognitive dissonance between is that the right term? Cognitive dissonance? Anyway, old books are crazy. Let's read some. Hi, Tito. Thank you for letting me know. I'll only be here for 35 minutes. Thank you very much for joining anyways. Any length of time is a perfect amount of time. Oh god, yeah, yeah, text. Exactly. You can read the bad words, it's the character saying it, not you. See, that is technically, because it is part of the original text, I can say, oh, I'm in the clear because it's in the text and I was just reading the text, but I also understand that that's not entirely how the internet works sometimes, so I do sort of try to at least hedge my bets where I can catch them. So you do understand that that is just something that I would like to do to make myself feel a little bit more comfortable. I don't really want to go around saying stuff that I know I shouldn't be saying. If I'm just not aware that it's not a fantastic word for the modern day, I hope that that's something that can be easier to forgive than me saying stuff that very clearly I shouldn't be saying in the modern day, and I know that I shouldn't be saying it. And it's more a question of my character. Well, it's more a demonstration of my character than it is, oh, I'm just reading text, right? That feels like a bit of a cop-out. Like, you should know better, especially if you're reading it out loud to an audience. And that's just my personal opinion on the topic. So yeah, I will try to catch it where I can. If it's something that I'm just ignorant about, that's not really anything I can control in the moment, and I will, of course, apologize when and if I learn after the fact that it is not the case, that it is not an acceptable or kosher word that I should be saying in the moment, etc, 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 etc. I feel like I've said this a couple times already. So yes, I hope that is forgivable. I hope that's fine. Yes, it is an extremely wonderful winter. And I suppose we should be getting started. Hey, we're about 17 minutes into the stream. And yeah, quite a lot of book to go through. I wonder if we'll make it through the first part and get into the actual story before we're done, because it is quite a long and a bit of a meandering introduction, I will say. YouTube spots automatically detects it slow and explodes the whole channel. Do you have something similar when someone says immortal? Sometimes. Oh, sorry, I only read half the comment. Okay. You could also read the Iliad. I'm sure it was written before slows were invented. I have the Odyssey somewhere, actually. I've mentioned that before. We went through it, and unfortunately, the situation with the Odyssey and all of Homer's works really is more about the copyright towards the translation of the original text. So at least in the copy that I own, it's a relatively newer copy. I bought this. It wasn't secondhand. I got this from a first-hand bookshop. Yeah, and it is the copyright holder, I believe, is still. Yes, yeah, no. So it says you're not allowed to. No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior permission of the publishers. Yes, I did just read that because I have my copy of the Odyssey sitting on the desk next to me. Don't worry about it. It hasn't been there since the last time we did this. Yes, okay, and then this dates to 2011, I believe. If I can find an older version, that would be nice, but I'm pretty sure the older version would probably also have some problematic text in it. Okay. Anyway, before I get distracted again, let's get started. Okay, no prologue. We start straight on into Volume 1, Chapter 1, Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. 1801. I have just returned from a visit to my landlord, the solitary neighbour that I shall be troubled with. This is certainly a beautiful country. In all England, I do not believe that I could have fixed on a situation so completely removed from the stir of society. A perfect misanthropist's heaven. And Mr. Heathcliff and I are such a suitable pair to divide the desolation between us. A capital fellow. He little imagined how my heart warmed towards him when I beheld his black eyes withdraw so suspiciously under their brows, as I rode up, and when his fingers sheltered themselves with a jealous resolution still further in his waistcoat, as I announced my name. Mr. Heathcliff, I said. A nod was the answer. Mr. Lockwood, your new tenant, sir. I do myself the honour of calling as soon as possible after my arrival to express the hope that I have not inconvenienced you by my perseverance in soliciting the occupation of Thrushcross Grange. I heard yesterday you had had some thoughts. Thrushcross Grange is my own, sir. Oh wait, I should do a different voice. Oh god. Thrushcross Grange is my own, sir, he interrupted, wincing. I should not allow anyone to inconvenience me. If I could hinder it, walk in. The walk in was uttered with closed teeth and expressed the sentiment, go to the deuce. Even the gate over which he leant manifested no sympathizing movement to the words, and I think that circumstance determined me to accept the invitation. I felt interested in a man who seemed more exaggeratedly reserved than myself. When he saw my horse's breast fairly pushing in the barrier, he did pull out his hand to unchain it, and then sullenly preceded me up the causeway, calling as we entered the court. Joseph, take Mr. Lockwood's horse and bring up some wine. Here we have the whole establishment of domestics, I suppose, was the reflection, suggested by this compound order. No wonder the grass grows up between the flags, and cattle are the only hedge-cutters. Joseph was an elderly, nay, an old man, very old perhaps, though hale and sinewy. Lord help us, he soliloquized in an undertone of peevish displeasure, while relieving me of my horse, looking, meantime, in my face so sourly that I charitably conjectured he must have need of divine aid to digest his dinner, and his pious ejaculation had no reference to my unexpected advent. Wuthering Heights is the name... yes, get your jokes. Okay. Wuthering Heights is the name of Mr. Heathcliff's dwelling, wuthering being a significant provincial adjective, descriptive of the atmospheric tumult to which it sits... descriptive of the atmospheric tumult to which its station is exposed in stormy weather. Pure, bracing ventilation they must have up there, at all times indeed. One may guess the power of the north wind, blowing over the edge, by the excessive slant of a few stunted firs at the end of the house, and by a range of gaunt thorns all stretching their limbs one way, as if craving alms of the sun. Happily, the architect had foresight to build it strong. The narrow windows are deeply set in the wall, and the corners defended with large jutting stones. Before passing the threshold, I paused to admire a quantity of grotesque carving lavishing over the front, and especially about the principal door, above which, among a wilderness of crumbling griffins and shameless little boys, I detected the date 1500, and the name Hareton Earnshaw. I would have made a few comments and requested a short history of the place from the surly owner, but his attitude at the door appeared to demand my speedy entrance or complete departure, and I had no desire to aggravate his impatience, previous to inspecting the penetralium. One step brought us into the family sitting room, without any introductory lobby or passage. They called it here the house, preeminently. It includes kitchen and parlour, generally, but I believe at Wuthering Heights the kitchen is forced to retreat altogether into another quarter. At least I distinguished a chatter of tongues and a clatter of culinary utensils deep within, and I observed no signs of roasting, boiling, or baking about the huge fireplace, nor any glitter of copper saucepans and tin cullenders on the walls. One end, indeed, reflected splendidly both light and heat from ranks of immense pewter dishes, interspersed with silver jugs and tankards, towering row after row in a vast oak dresser to the very roof. The latter had never been underdrawn, its entire anatomy laid bare to an inquiring eye, except where a frame of wood laden with oatcakes and clusters of legs of beef, mutton, and ham concealed it. Above the chimney were sundry villainous old guns and a couple of horse pistols, and, by way of ornament, 3 gaudily painted canisters disposed along its ledge. The floor was of smooth, white stone, the chairs high-backed, primitive structures painted green, 1 or 2 heavy black ones lurking in the shade. In an arch under the dresser reposed a huge silver-coloured... in an arch under the dresser reposed a huge liver-covered... Okay, what's my ethics on this one now? Liver-coloured female dog pointer surrounded by a swarm of squealing puppies, and other dogs haunted other recesses. God, we're on page 5. uh... The apartment and furniture would have been nothing extraordinary as belonging to a homely northern farmer with a stubborn countenance and stalwart limbs set out to advantage in knee breeches and gaiters. You can say the word, you know? Yeah. It took me by surprise. I'm keeping an eye out for it, so it kind of stopped me in my tracks. Such an individual seated in his armchair, his mug of ale frothing on the round table before him, is to be seen in any circuit of 5 or 6 miles among these hills, if you go at the right time after dinner. But Mr. Heathcliff forms a singular contrast to his abode and style of living. He is a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect, in dress and manners a gentleman, that is, as much a gentleman as many a country squire, rather slovenly, perhaps, yet not looking amiss with his negligence, because he has an erect and handsome figure, and rather morose, possibly some people might suspect him of a degree of underbred pride. I have a sympathetic chord within that tells me it is nothing of the sort. I know, by instinct, his reserve springs from an aversion to showy displays of feeling, to manifestations of mutual kindliness. He'll love and hate equally under cover, and esteem it as a species of impertinence to be loved or hated again. No, I'm running on too fast. I bestow my own attributes over-liberally on him. Mr. Heathcliff may have entirely dissimilar reasons for keeping his hand out of the way, when he meets a would-be acquaintance to those which actuate me. Let me hope my constitution is almost peculiar. My dear mother used to say I should never have a comfortable home, and only last summer I proved myself perfectly unworthy of one. While enjoying a month of fine weather at the sea-coast, I was thrown into the company of a most fascinating creature, a real goddess in my eyes, as long as she took no notice of me. I never told my love vocally. Still, if looks have language, the merest idiot might have guessed I was over head and ears. She understood me at last, and looked a return, the sweetest of all imaginable looks. And what did I do? I confess it with shame. Shrunk icily into myself, like a snail, at every glance retired colder and further, till, finally, the poor innocent was led to doubt her own senses, and, overwhelmed with confusion at her supposed mistake, persuaded her mamma to decamp. By this curious turn of disposition, I have gained the reputation of deliberate heartlessness. How undeserved, I alone can appreciate. I took a seat at the end of the hearthstone opposite that towards which my landlord advanced, and filled up an interval of silence by attempting to caress the canine mother, who had left her nursery and was sneaking wolfishly to the back of my legs, her lip curled up and her white teeth watering for a snatch. My caress provoked a long guttural snarl. You better get the dog... Sorry. Let me take a sip of water, hang on. Okay. You better let the dog alone. You better let the dog alone, growled Mr. Heathcliff in unison, checking fiercer demonstrations with a punch of his foot. She's not accustomed to be spoiled, not kept for a pet. Then, striding to a side door, he shouted again, Joseph! Joseph mumbled indistinctly in the depths of the cellar, but gave no intimation of ascending. So his master dived down to him, leaving me vis-a-vis the ruffianly bitch, and a pair of grim, shaggy sheepdogs who shared with her a jealous guardianship over all my movements. Not anxious to come in contact with their fangs, I sat still, but, imagining they would scarcely understand tacit insults, I unfortunately indulged in winking and making faces at the trio, and some turn of my physiognomy so irritated madam that she suddenly broke into a fury and leapt on my knees. I flung her back and hastened to interpose the table between us. This proceeding roused the whole hive. Half a dozen four-footed fiends of various sizes and ages issued from hidden dens to the common centre. I felt my heels and coat laps peculiar subjects of assault, and, parrying off the larger combatants as effectually as I could, with the poker, I was constrained to demand aloud assistance from some of the household in re-establishing peace. Mr. Heathcliff and his man climbed the cellar steps with vexatious phlegm. I don't think they moved 1 second faster than usual, though the hearth was an absolute tempest of worrying and yelping. Happily, an inhabitant of the kitchen made more dispatch. A lusty dame, with tucked-up gown, bare arms, and fire-flushed cheeks, rushed into the midst of our into the midst of us flourishing a frying pan, and used that weapon and her tongue to such purpose that the storm subsided magically, and only she remained, heaving like a sea after a high wind, when her master entered on the scene. "What the devil is the matter?" he asked, eyeing me in a manner that I could ill endure after his inhospitable treatment. "What the devil indeed?" I muttered. "The herd of 'em possessed swine could have had no worse spirits in them than those animals of yours, sir. You might as well have left a stranger with a brood of tigers." "They won't meddle with persons who touch nothing," he remarked, putting the bottle before me and restoring the displaced table. "The dogs do right to be vigilant. Take a glass of wine?" No, thank you. Not bitten, are you? If I had been, I would have set my signet on the biter." Heathcliff's countenance relaxed into a grin. Come, he said. "You are flurried, Mr. Lockwood. Here, take a little wine. Guests are so exceedingly rare in this house that I and my dogs, I am willing to own, hardly know how to receive them. Your health, sir." I bowed and returned the pledge, beginning to perceive that it would be foolish to sit sulking for the misbehaviour of a pack of curs. Besides, I felt loath to yield the fellow further amusement at my expense, since his humour took that turn. He, probably swayed by prudential considerations of the folly of offending a good tenant, relaxed a little in the laconic style of chipping off his pronouns and auxiliary verbs, and introduced what he supposed would be a subject of interest to me, a discourse on the advantages and disadvantages of my present place of retirement. I found him very intelligent on the topics we touched, and before I went home, I was encouraged so far as to volunteer another visit tomorrow. He evidently wished no repetition of my intrusion. I shall go notwithstanding. It is astonishing how sociable I feel myself compared with him. And that's the end of chapter 1. Come now, it's media literacy time. What has happened in chapter 1? A lusty dame. Are we sure this book is SFW? Well, if the movie's anything to go by, it certainly isn't. Did she drink wine as the characters drank wine? I assure you I only have a glass of water with me. The dogs are bad. Pronouns in 1840s? I know, right? This was supposed to be the best time. When, everyone knew their place and the perfect family existed and no woman ever had to work and, something, that's what nature is. Okay, Phoenix. Thank you, Phoenix. Okay, the dogs are bad. I suppose that's good enough. I do like our main character. He feels a bit like a puppy dog himself. Well, not our main character. Our POV character. I forget. Victorian novels. It's not the same. Woman did work? Exactly. Exactly. I should send you some Slovenian red. When will you finally get a PO box? Oh, I don't know. I don't like the idea that you guys will know. No, I don't know what you guys will send me. I'm a little scared. Actually, no. Maybe it would be fun to try. I'm a little traumatized from that one company that had a PO box and they opened it, and then I think like within the first few days they got sent live fish, and I don't think I could ever. I don't know what I'd do. No one should be sending that through to South Africa. It'll get delayed and then they'll all be dead. It'll just be dead fish. Not that you guys will send me fish, but you know what I mean, right? Don't expect anything from me. I will only ever send hate to you. Oh, okay, there you go. And sweets? Oh, okay, maybe it's worth it then. Okay. Moving on to chapter 2. Hi. Let me take a stretch and a breathe. I have to be gentle with myself. We're going to be doing this for quite a while. Chapter 2. Yesterday afternoon set in misty and cold. I had half a mind to spend it by my study fire, instead of wading through heath and mud to Wuthering Heights. On coming up from dinner, however, in brackets, in B, I dined between 12 and 1 o'clock. The housekeeper, a matronly lady taken as a fixture along with the house, could not or would not comprehend my request that I might be served at 5, close brackets. On mounting this... Oh, they didn't even finish the sentence. Okay, carrying on. On mounting the stairs with this lazy intention and stepping into the room, I saw a servant girl on her knees, surrounded by brushes and coal scuttles, and raising an infernal dust as she extinguished the flames with heaps of cinders. This spectacle drove me back immediately. I took my hat and, after a 4 miles walk, arrived at Heathcliff's garden gate just in time to escape the first feathery flakes of a snow shower. On that bleak hill, top of the earth, was hard with a black frost, and the air made me shiver through every limb. Being unable to remove the chain, I jumped over, and running up the flagged causeway, bordered with straggling gooseberry bushes, knocked vainly for admittance until my knuckles tingled and the dogs howled. "Wretched inmates!" I ejaculated mentally. Please clip that. "You deserve perpetual isolation from your species for your churlish inhospitality. At least I would not keep my doors barred in the daytime. I don't care. I will get in." So resolved, I grasped the latch and shook it vehemently. Vinegar-faced Joseph projected his head from a round window of the barn. "What are ye for?" he shouted. "To Meister's dine at fold. Go round by the end to the Lythe if ye went to spike tell him." This is how it's written. I'm reading this phonetically. Bonus points if you know what the hell I just said. Between me and not being able to do an accent to kill myself, to save myself, and the way it's written being a little bit incomprehensible. Close the book. "Is there nobody inside to open the door?" I hallooed responsively. "They's nobbut to missus, and she'll not open ye make your flaysome dins till neat." "There's no one here but the missus, and she won't open even if you make your flaysome sounds till night." I think that's what he's saying. "Why, cannot you tell her who I am, eh, Joseph?" "Norn me, all hey no hint of it," muttered the head, vanishing. I didn't even think about how hard this would be to read out loud. Dumbass. Not me. "All hey no hand, I'll have no hand with it." Ah, I see, okay. "I'll hey no hand with it, wit," muttered the head, vanishing. The snow began to drive thickly. I seized the handle to essay another trial, when a young man without coat and shouldering a pitchfork appeared in the yard behind. He hailed me to follow him, and after marching through a wash-house and a paved area containing a coal shed, pump, and a pigeon cote, we at length arrived in the large, warm, cheerful apartment, where I was formally received. It glowed delightfully in the radiance of an immense fire, compounded of coal, peat, and wood, and near the table, laid for a plentiful evening meal, I was pleased to observe the Missus, an individual whose existence I had never previously suspected. I bowed and waited, thinking she would bid me take a seat. She looked at me, leaning back in her chair, and remained motionless and mute. Rough weather, I remarked. I'm afraid, Mrs. Heathcliff, the door must bear the consequence of your servants' leisure attendance. I had hard work to make them hear me. She never opened her mouth. I stared, she stared also. At any rate, she kept her eyes on me in a cool, regardless manner, exceedingly embarrassing and disagreeable. Sit down, said the young man gruffly. He'll be in soon. I obeyed and hemmed and called the villain Juno, who deigned at the second interview to move the extreme tip of her tail in token of owing my acquaintance. A beautiful animal, I commenced again. Do you intend parting with the little ones, madam? They are not mine, said the amiable hostess more repellingly than Heathcliff himself could have replied. Ah, your favourites are among these, I continued, turning to an obscure cushion full of something like cats. A strange choice of favourites, she observed scornfully. Unluckily, it was a heap of dead rabbits. I hemmed once more and drew closer to the hearth. Sorry. I hope I read that okay. I hope it's not like completely illegible, I guess. What's illegible but verbal? Unintelligible. Let's see. Turning to an obscure cushion full of something like cats. A strange choice of favourites, she observed scornfully. Unluckily, it was a heap of dead rabbits. I hemmed once more and drew closer to the hearth, repeating my comment on the wildness of the evening. You should not have come out, she said, rising and reaching from the chimney-piece 2 of the painted canisters. Her position before was sheltered from the light. Now I had a distinct view of her whole figure and countenance. She was slender, and apparently scarcely past girlhood, an admirable form, and the most exquisite little face that I had ever had the pleasure of beholding. Small features, very fair, flaxen ringlets, or rather golden, hanging loose on her delicate neck, and eyes, had they been agreeable in expression, they would have been irresistible. Fortunately for my susceptible heart, the only sentiment they evinced, however, between scorn and a kind of desperation, singularly unnatural to be detected there. The canisters were almost out of her reach. I made a motion to aid her. She turned upon me as a miser might turn if anyone attempted to assist him in counting his gold. I don't want your help, she snapped. I can get them for myself. I beg your pardon, I hastened to reply. Were you asked to tea? She demanded, tying an apron over her neat black frock, and standing with a spoonful of the leaf poised over the cup. I shall be glad to have a cup, I answered. Were you asked? She repeated. No, I said, half smiling. You are the proper person to ask me. She flung the tea back, spoon and all, and resumed her chair in a pet, her forehead corrugated and her red underlip pushed out, like a child's ready to cry. Meanwhile, the young man had slung onto his person a decidedly shabby upper garment, and, erecting himself before the blaze, looked down on me, from the corner of his eyes, for all the world as if there was some mortal feud unavenged between us. I began to doubt whether he were a servant or not. His dress and speech were both rude, entirely devoid of the superiority observable in Mr. and Mrs. Heathcliff. His thick brown curls were rough and uncultivated, his whiskers encroached bearishly over his cheeks, and his hands were embrowned like those of a common labourer. Still, his bearing was free, almost haughty, and he showed none of a domestic's assiduity in attending on the lady of the house. In the absence of clear proofs of his condition, I deemed it best to abstain from noticing his curious conduct, and 5 minutes afterwards the entrance of Heathcliff relieved me in some measure from my uncomfortable state. You see, sir, I am come according to promise, I exclaimed, assuming the cheerful, and I fear I shall be weather-bound for half an hour if you can afford me shelter during that space. Half an hour, he said, shaking the white flakes from his clothes. I wonder you should select the thick of a snowstorm to ramble about in. Did you know that you run a risk of being lost in the marshes? People familiar with these moors often miss their road on such evenings, and I can tell you there is no chance of a change at present. Perhaps I can get a guide among your lads, and he might stay at the Grange until morning. Could you spare me one? No, I could not. Oh, indeed. Well, then I must trust to my own sagacity. I'm reading a lot of words I've never read out loud before, so I certainly hope these are at least a little bit correct. Sagacity. Reading out loud is rough, lol. Yeah, I know. I'm terrible at this. Oh, shame, tall man. Thank you for joining. I'm sorry about your charger. Anyway. Are you going to make the tea? Demanded he of the shabby coat, shifting his ferocious gaze from me to the young lady. Is he going to have any? She asked, appealing to Heathcliff. Get it ready, will you? Was the answer, uttered so savagely that I started. The tone in which the words were said revealed a genuine bad nature. I no longer felt inclined to call Heathcliff a capital fellow. When the preparations were finished, he invited me with, Now, sir, bring forward your chair. And we all, including the rustic youth, drew round the table, an austere silence prevailing while we discussed our meal. I thought if I had caused the cloud, it was my duty to make an effort to dispel it. They could not every day sit so grim and taciturn, and it was impossible, however ill-tempered they might be, that the universal scowl they wore was their everyday countenance. It is strange, I began, in the interval of swallowing one cup of tea and receiving another. It is sorry. It is strange how custom can mould our tastes and ideas. Many could not imagine the existence of happiness in a life of such complete exile from the world as you spend, Mr. Heathcliff. Yet I'll venture to say that, surrounded by your family and with your amiable lady as the presiding genius over your home and heart— My amiable lady, he interrupted, with an almost diabolical sneer on his face. Where is she, my amiable lady? Amiable? Amiable. Amiable. Mrs. Heathcliff, your wife, I mean. Oh, yes, oh. You would intimate that her spirit has taken the post of ministering angel and guards the fortunes of Wuthering Heights even when her body is gone. Is that it? Perceiving myself in a blunder, I attempted to correct it. I might have seen there was too great a disparity between the ages of the parties to make it likely that they were man and wife. One was about 40, a period of mental vigour at which men seldom cherish the delusion of being married for love. By girls, that dream is reserved for the solace of our declining years. There are a lot of commas placed in very interesting places in this. The other did not look 17. Then it flashed upon me. The clown at my elbow, who is drinking his tea out of a basin and eating his bread with unwashed hands, may be her husband. Heathcliff, Jr., of course. Here is the consequence of being buried alive. She has thrown herself away upon that boor from sheer ignorance that better individuals existed. He's a real nice guy. A sad pity. I must beware how I cause her to regret the choice. He is a nice guy. I love how the PNG tuber's mouth is held open when you're speaking, so if you read a long sentence uninterrupted, your OC is just beaming the words directly out of her throat. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, yeah, it's... Why are you calling him nice? He's weird. Well, you see, it's a bit of a term to refer to guys who are a bit weird. Anyway. Let's see, where was I? I must be aware how I cause her to regret her choice. Yeah, sure, buddy. The last reflection may seem conceited. It was not. The very next line. My neighbour struck me as bordering on repulsive. I knew through experience that I was tolerably attractive. Jesus. Mrs. Heathcliff is my daughter-in-law, said Heathcliff, corroborating my surmise. He turned as he spoke, a peculiar look in her direction, a look of hatred unless he has a most perverse set of facial muscles that will not, like those of other people, interpret the language of a soul. Ah, certainly, I see now. You are the favoured possessor of the beneficent fairy, I remarked, turning to my neighbour. This was worse than before. The youth grew crimson and clenched his fist with every appearance of a meditated assault, but he seemed to recollect himself presently, and smothered the storm in a brutal curse, muttered on by my muttered on my behalf, which, however, I took care not to notice. Unhappy in your conjectures, sir, observed my host. We neither of us have the privilege of owning your good fairy. Oh, sorry. Unhappy in our conjectures. Hang on, give me a second. I'm not reading any of this correctly. It's not a good sign when I'm starting and I'm already stumbling over all my words. Although I suppose we're almost an hour in. Oh, jeez. Okay. Wow. I gotta pick up the pace. Okay. Unhappy in your conjectures, sir, observed my host. We neither of us have the privilege of owning your good fairy. Her mate is dead. I said she was my daughter-in-law, therefore she must have married my son. And this young man is not my son, assuredly. Heathcliff smiled again, as if it were rather too bold a jest to attribute the paternity of that bear to him. My name is Harriton Earnshaw, growled the other, and I'd counsel you to respect it. I've shown no disrespect, was my reply, laughing internally at the dignity with which he announced himself. He fixed his eye on me longer than I cared to return the stare, for fear that I might be tempted either to box his ears or render my hilarity audible. I began to feel unmistakably out of place in that pleasant family circle. The dismal spiritual atmosphere overcame and more than neutralized the glowing physical comforts around me, and I resolved to be cautious how I ventured under those rafters a third time. The business of eating being concluded, and no one uttering a word of sociable conversation, I approached a window to examine the weather. A sorrowful sight I saw. Dark night coming down prematurely, and sky and hills mingling in one bitter whirl of wind and suffocating snow. I don't think it possible for me to get home now without a guide, I could not help exclaiming. The roads will be buried already, and if they were bare, I could scarcely distinguish a foot in advance. Harriton, drive those dozen sheep into the barn porch. They'll be covered if left in the fold all night, and put a plank before them, said Heathcliff. How must I do? I continued with rising irritation. There was no reply to my question, and on looking round, I saw only Joseph bringing in a pail of porridge for the dogs, and Mrs. Heathcliff leaning over the fire, diverting herself with burning a bundle of matches which had fallen from the chimney-piece as she restored the tea canister to its place. The former, when he had deposited his burden, took a critical survey of the room, and in cracked tones grated out, "Oh, jeez." I wonder how you can fashion to stand there of idleness and war when all on them's going act. But you're a naught, and it's no use talking. You'll never mend all you. I can do this. Hang on. Y'all never mend all your ill ways, but go right to the devil like your mother afore ye. That was eligible. that was a little bit understandable, right? I imagined for a moment that this piece of eloquence was addressed to me, and sufficiently enraged, stepped towards the aged rascal with an intention of kicking him out the door. Mrs. Heathcliff, however, checked me by her answer. You scandalous old hypocrite, she replied. Are you not afraid of being carried away bodily whenever you mention the devil's name? I warn you to refrain from provoking me, or I'll ask your abduction as a special favour. Stop, look there, Joseph, she continued, taking a long dark book from a shelf. I'll show you how far I've progressed in the black art, and I shall soon be competent to make a clear house of it. The red cow didn't die by chance, and your rheumatism can hardly be reckoned among providential visitations. Oh, wicked. How do you do that in an accent? Oh, you wicked, gasped the elder. May the Lord deliver us from evil. No, reprobate, you are a castaway. Be off, or I'll hurt you seriously. I'll have you all modelled in wax and clay, and the first who passes the limits I fix, I'll not say what he shall be done to, but you'll see. Go, I'm looking at you. The little witch put a mock malignity into her beautiful eyes, and Joseph, trembling with sincere horror, hurried out praying and ejaculating wicked as he went. I thought her conduct must be prompted by a species of dreary fun, and now that we were alone, I endeavoured to interest her in my distress. Mrs. Heathcliff, I said earnestly, you must excuse me for troubling you, I presume, because with that face I'm sure you cannot help being good-hearted. Do point out some landmarks by which I may know my way home. I have no more idea how to get there than you would have how to get to London. Take the road you came, she answered, ensconcing herself in a chair with a candle and the long book open before her. It is brief advice, but as sound as I can give. Then if you hear of me being discovered dead in a bog or a pit full of snow, your conscience won't whisper that it is partially your fault? How so? I cannot escort you. They wouldn't let me go to the end of the garden wall. You! I should be sorry to ask you to cross the threshold for my convenience on such a night, I cried. I want you to tell me my way, not show it, or else to persuade Mr. Heathcliff to give me a guide. Who? There he is himself, Earnshaw, Zillah, Joseph, and I. Which would you have? Are there no boys at the farm? No, those are all. Then it follows that I am compelled to stay. That you may settle with your host. I have nothing to do with it. I hope it will be a lesson to you to make I hope it will be a lesson to you to make no more rash journeys on these hills, cried Heathcliff's stern voice from the kitchen entrance. As to staying here, I don't keep accommodations for visitors. You must share a bed with Hareton or Joseph if you do. I can sleep on a chair in this room, I replied. No, no, a stranger is a stranger, be he rich or poor. It will not suit me to permit any one in the range of the palace while I am off guard, said the unmannerly wretch. With this insult, my patient was at an end. I uttered an expression of disgust and pushed past him into the yard, running against Earnshaw in my haste. It was so dark that I could not see the means of exit, and as I wandered round, I heard another specimen of their civil behaviour amongst each other. At first, the young man appeared about to befriend me. I'll go with him as far as the park, he said. You'll go with him to hell, exclaimed his... You'll go with him to hell, exclaimed his master, or whatever relation he bore. And who is to look after the horses, eh? A man's life is of more consequence than one's evening neglect of the horses. Someone must go, murmured Mrs. Heathcliff, more kindly than I expected. Not at your command, retorted Hareton. If you set store on him, you'd be better quiet. Then I hope his ghost will haunt you, and I hope Mr. Heathcliff will never get another tenant till the Grange is a ruin, she answered sharply. Hearken, hearken, shoes cursing on him, muttered Joseph, towards whom I had been steering. He sat within earshot, milking the cows by the aid of a lantern which I seized unceremoniously, and, calling out that I would send it back on the morrow, rushed into the nearest postern. Maister, Maister, he's stealing the lantern, shouted the ancient, pursuing my retreat. Hey, Nasher, hey, dog, hey, wolf, hold them, hold them! On opening the little door, two hairy monsters flew at my throat, bearing me down and extinguishing the light, while a mingled guffaw from Heathcliff and Hareton put the copestone on my rage and humiliation. Fortunately, the beasts seemed more bent on stretching their paws and yawning and flourishing their tails than devouring me alive. But they would suffer no resurrection, and I was forced to lie till their malignant masters pleased to deliver me. Then, hatless and trembling... Then, hatless and trembling with wrath, I ordered the miscreants to let me out, on their peril to keep me 1 minute longer, with several incoherent threats of retaliation that, in their indefinite depth of virulency, smacked of the king's leer. The vehemence of my agitation brought on a copious bleeding at the nose, and still Heathcliff laughed, and still I scolded. I don't know what would have concluded the scene had there not been one person at hand rather more rational than myself, and more benevolent than my entertainer. This was Zillah, the stout housewife, who at length issued forth to inquire into the nature of the uproar. She thought that some of them had been laying violent hands on me, and, not daring to attack her master, she turned her vocal artillery against the younger scoundrel. Well, Mr. Earnshaw, she cried, I wonder what you'll have agate next. Are we going to murder folk on our very doorstones? I see this house will never do for me. Look at the look at the poor lad, he's fair choking. Wish it, you must go on. Come on, and I'll cure that. There now, hold you still. With these words, she suddenly splashed a pint of icy water down my neck and pulled me into the kitchen. Mr. Heathcliff followed, his accidental merriment expiring quickly in its habitual moroseness. I was sick exceedingly, and dizzy and faint, and thus compelled, perforce, to accept lodgings under his roof. He told Zilla to give me a glass of brandy, and then passed on to the inner room, while she condoled with me on my sorry predicament, and having obeyed his orders, whereby I was somewhat revived, ushered me to bed. And that's the end of chapter 2. That was a bit of a longer one, wasn't it? Another sip of water. I might be wrong, but I think it's Scottish too. Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can really imagine it as, based on like the way that it's being written. Because it's if you've read Harry Potter, you know that the character Hagrid, the way that his words are written is in this like phonetic style. I'm not sure if that's the official term for it. I don't actually know the official term, but like it's not written in regular English. It's got sort of this visual style to it, where it's spelt phonetically. That's the only way I can really explain it. So so that's why I'm having such trouble with it, because I'm also kind of trying to understand it by reading it out loud. Because just the way everything is spelt and done, it's a little bit of a mystery until I actually read it out loud. So it's a bit of an interesting one. Did it say someone was a witch? Yes. Recap of chapter 2, everyone. What have we learned? I mean, they're Victorians. Familial happiness wasn't allowed back then. Okay, so everybody at this house hates each other, but what does that mean? I believe it means that some stuff has happened, and the rest of the book is going to be about what happened to make them like this. You can read the weird spelling, you just need to summon the Irish indentured servant within you. Again, Irish or Scottish? I don't know, it feels more Scottish. I wonder on you in a confession to stand there in idleness. No, I can't do it. I'm like stumbling over the words as I say them. It's just not a good time. Did it say someone was a witch? Yes, indeed. Sorry. I read that line and then forgot about it. Yes, so Mrs. Heathcliff, the widower, who was married to Mr. Heathcliff's son, is scaring Joseph, the Scottish gardener, I suppose. He's sort of the everyman around the house. She's scaring him by telling him that she's a witch, and sort of making fun of him by saying she's going to bewitch him and ruin his life, and that she's the reason he's got arthritis. Trying to incorporate the accent into the spelling always bothered me. It always seems so casually rude. It's something that I've only ever really seen done with like Scottish and Irish accents. Like if it was done with any other accent, I think I would think of it as extremely weird. But like, because I grew up reading books that did exactly that, but only with accents like from, I guess, non-traditionally speaking, non-King's English speaking parts of the United Kingdom. There's definitely something there. There's definitely some, like, you think about it a little longer than a couple seconds and it's like, yeah, it does kind of feel weird and wrong. But yeah, it is, yeah, there's definitely something there, isn't there? But is she really a witch? I don't think so. I believe there's no actual magic in the story. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Hannah doesn't like whimsy and fantasy and magic and wonder. Oh no, damn. Oh. I think I've seen it done with a Jamaican accent before. Ooh. Ooh, that's a bit... It is a very distinct accent, but it still feels weird. Yeah, I don't think you should be doing that. In the same way that people shouldn't be putting on Rastafarian accents or Jamaican accents to play characters or to imitate people who were or are Jamaican. I feel like it falls into that same category. Do you know what I mean? Oh, maybe it's an American thing. We've got a lot of accents here. I see it when characters have a Cajun or Brooklyn or Virginia accent too. Ah, okay. Now that you mention it, yeah, the classic I'm walking here. I don't think most would mind. Yeah, I'm looking a little bit too much. I'm overthinking it a little bit, but that's also kind of part of my job, is overthinking things. Or at least it will be. One day. Okay. Shall we move on to chapter 3? Yes, I think we shall. Okay. Starting on chapter 3. While leading the way upstairs, she recommended that I should hide the candle and not make a noise, for her master had an odd notion about the chambers she would put me in, and never let anybody lodge there willingly. I asked the reason. She did not know, she answered. She had only lived there a year or two, and they had so many queer goings-on she could not begin to be curious. Okay, maybe I am hoping that there's magic in this, because this is starting to sound like a ghost story. Too stupefied to be curious myself, I fastened my door and glanced round for the bed. The whole furniture consisted of a chair, a clothes press, and a large oak case, with squares cut out near the top, resembling coach windows. Having approached the structure, I looked inside, and perceived it to be a singular sort of old-fashioned couch, very conveniently designed to obviate the necessity for every member of the family having a room to himself. In fact, it formed a little closet, and the ledge of a window, which it enclosed, served as a table. I slid back the panelled sides, got in with my light, pulled them together again, and felt secure against the vigilance of Heathcliff and everyone else. The ledge where I placed my candle had a few mildewed books piled up in one corner, and it was covered with writing scratched on the paint. This writing, however, was nothing but a name repeated in all kinds of characters, large and small. Catherine Earnshaw, here and there, varied to Catherine Heathcliff, and then again to Catherine Linton. In vapid listlessness, I leant my head against the window and continued spelling over Catherine Earnshaw, Heathcliff, Linton, until my eyes closed. But they had not rested 5 minutes when a glare of white letters started from the dark, as vivid as spectres. The air swarmed with Catherines, and rousing myself to dispel the obtrusive name, I discovered my candlewick reclining on one of the antique volumes, and perfuming the place with an odour of roasted calf skin. I snuffed it off, and, very ill at ease, under the influence of cold and lingering nausea, sat up and spread open the injured tome on my knee. It was a testament in lean type, and smelling dreadfully musty. A fly-leaf bore the inscription, Catherine Earnshaw, her book, and a date some quarter of a century back. I shut it and took up another, and another, till I had examined all. Catherine's library was select, and its state of dilapidation proved it to have been well used, though not altogether for a legitimate purpose. Scarcely one chapter had escaped a pen and ink commentary, at least the appearance of one, covering every morsel of blank that the printer had left. Some were detached sentences, other parts took the form of a regular diary, scrawled in an unformed childish hand, and the top of an extra page, quite a treasure probably when first lighted on, I was greatly amused to behold an excellent caricature of my friend Joseph, rudely yet powerfully sketched. An immediate interest kindled within me for the unknown Catherine, and I began forthwith to decipher her faded hieroglyphics. An awful Sunday, commenced the paragraph beneath. I wish my father were back again. Hindley is a detestable substitute. His conduct to Heathcliff is atrocious. H and I are going to rebel. We took our initiatory step this evening. All day had been flooding with rain. Sorry, a new paragraph. All day had been flooding with rain. We could not go to church, so Joseph must needs get up a congregation in the garret. And while Hindley and his wife basked downstairs before a comfortable fire, doing anything but reading their Bibles, I'll answer for it, Heathcliff, myself, and the unhappy ploughboy were commanded to take our prayer books and mount. We were ranged in a row on a sack of corn, groaning and shivering, and hoping that Joseph would shiver too, so that he might give us a short homily for his own sake. A vain idea. The service lasted precisely 3 hours, and yet my brother had the face to exclaim, when he saw us descending, "What, done already?" A new paragraph. On Sunday evenings, we used to be permitted to play, if we did not make much noise. Now a mere titter is sufficient to set us into corners. You forgot you have a new paragraph. You forgot you have a master here, says the tyrant. I'll demolish the first who puts me out of temper. I insist on perfect sobriety and silence. Oh boy, was that you? Francis, darling, pull his hair as you go by. I heard him snap his fingers. New paragraph. Frances pulled his hair heartily and then went and seated herself on her husband's knee, and there they were, like two babies, kissing and talking nonsense by the hour. Foolish palaver that we should be ashamed of. We made ourselves as snug as our means allowed in the arch of the dresser. I had just fastened our pinafores together and hung them up for a curtain when in comes Joseph on an errand from the stables. He tears down my handiwork, boxes my ears, and croaks, "To Meister Nobbut just buried and Sabbath not erred, and to sand out to gospel stills a year lungs and yar darby liking. Shame on ye, sit ye down, ill childer. They's good books enough if ye'll read 'em, sit ye down and think o' yourself." See, that was more Irish. See, when it's through her voice, then it's Irish. And I almost got through the whole thing, too. Sit down and think yourselves. Saying this, he compelled us so to square our positions that we might receive, from the far-off fire, a dull ray to show us the text of the lumber he thrust upon us. I could not bear the employment. I took my dingy volume by the scroop and hurled it into the dog kennel, vowing I hated a good book. Heathcliff kicked his to the same place. Then there was a hubbub. "Meister Hindley," shouted our chaplain. "Meister, come hither. Miss Cathy's riven the back off the helmet and salvation, and Heathcliff's paused his fit into the first part tis broad way to destruction. It's fair flayin' out. You let him go on this gate. Ech, thowd man." Oh, jeez. The old man ought to lace them properly. The old man ought to lace them properly, but he's gone. I am so sorry to everyone in the United Kingdom. Doesn't matter where you're from. I'm sorry to everyone. I'm sorry to everyone in Ireland. I'm sorry to everyone in North Ireland. I'm sorry to everyone in Scotland. I'm sorry to all of you. Hindley hurried up from his paradise on the hearth, and seizing one of us by the collar and the other by the arm, hurled both into the back kitchen, where, Joseph asseverated, old Nick would fetch us as sure as we were living, and so comforted we each sought a separate nook to await his advent. I reached this book and a pot of ink from a shelf, and pushed the house door ajar to give me light, and I have got the time on with writing for 20 minutes, but my companion is impatient and proposes that we should appropriate the diary woman's cloak, and have a scamper on the moors until under its shelter. A pleasant suggestion, and then if the surly old man come in, he may believe his prophecy verified. We cannot be damper or colder in the rain than we are here. Ireland is not in the UK. I know. I specifically Northern Ireland is in the UK. Not Ireland. I suppose Catherine fulfilled her project, for the next sentence took up another subject. She waxed lachrymose. How little did I... And a new paragraph. "How little did I dream that Hindley would ever make me cry so," she wrote. "My head aches till I cannot keep it on the pillow, and still I can't give over. Poor Heathcliff. Hindley calls him a vagabond, and won't let him sit with us, nor eat with us any more, and he says he and I must not play together, and threatens to turn him out of the house if we break his orders. He has been blaming our father, how dared he, for treating H too liberally, and swears he will reduce him to his right place." I began to nod drowsily over the dim page, my eye wandering from manuscript to print. I saw a red ornamented title, 70 times 7 and the first of the 71st, a pious discourse delivered by the Reverend James Branderham in the chapel of Gimmerden Sow, and while I was half-consciously worrying my brain to guess what James Branderham would make of his subject, I sank back into bed and fell asleep. Alas for the effects of bad tea and bad temper! What else could it be that made me pass such a terrible night? I don't remember another that I can all compare with it since I was capable of suffering. I began to dream, almost before I ceased to be sensible of my locality. I thought it was morning, and I had set out on my way home with Joseph for a guide. The snow lay yards deep in our road, and as we floundered on, my companion wearied me with constant reproaches that I had not brought a pilgrim's staff, telling me I could never get into the house without one, and boastfully flourishing a heavy-headed cudgel, which I understood to be so denominated. For a moment I considered it absurd that I should need such a weapon to gain admittance into my own residence. Then a new idea flashed across me. I was not going there. We were journeying to hear the famous James Branderham preach from the text, 70 times 7, and either Joseph, the preacher, or I had committed the first of the 71st, and were to be publicly exposed and excommunicated. We came to the chapel. I have passed it rarely in my walks, twice or thrice. It lies in a hollow between two hills, an elevated hollow near a swamp, whose peaty moisture is said to answer all the purpose of embalming on the few corpses deposited there. The roof has been kept whole hitherto, but as the clergyman's stipend is only £20 per annum, and a house with 2 rooms threatening speedily to determine into one, no clergyman will undertake the duties of pastor, especially as it is currently reported that his flock would rather let him starve than increase the living by 1 penny from their own pockets. However, in my dream, Jabes had a full and attentive congregation. And he preached, good God, what a sermon, divided into 490 parts, each fully equal to an ordinary address from the pulpit, and each discussing a separate sin. Where he searched for them I cannot tell. He had his private manner of interpreting the phrase, and it seemed necessary the brother should sin different sins on every occasion. There were the most curious character, odd transgressions that I never imagined previously. Oh, how weary I grew! How I writhed and yawned and nodded and revived! How I pinched and pricked myself and rubbed my eyes and stood up and sat down again and nudged Joseph to inform me if he would ever have done. I was condemned to hear all out. Finally, he reached the first of the 71st, and that crisis, a sudden inspiration descended upon me. I was moved to rise and denounce James Branderham as the sinner of the sin that no Christian need pardon. Sir, I exclaimed, sitting here within these 4 walls at one stretch, I have endured and forgiven the 490 heads of your discourse. 70 times 7 times have I plucked up my hat, have been about to depart. 70 times 7 times have you preposterously forced me to resume my seat. The 491st is too much. Fellow martyrs, have at him, drag him down and crush him to atoms, that the place which knows him may know him no more. Thou art the man, cried Jabes, after a solemn pause, leaning over his cushion. 70 times 7 times didst thou gapingly contort thy visage. 70 times 7 did I take counsel with my soul. Lo, this is human weakness. This may also have been absolved. The first of the 71st is come. Brethren, execute upon him the judgment written. Such honour have all his saints. With that concluding word, the whole assembly, exalting their pilgrim staves, rushed round me in a body, and I, having no weapon to raise in self-defence, commenced grappling with Joseph, my nearest and most ferocious assailant, for his. In the confluence of the multitude, several clubs crossed. Blows aimed at me fell on other sconces. Presently the whole chapel resounded with rappings and counter-rappings. Every man's hand was against his neighbour, and Branderham, unwilling to remain idle, poured forth his zeal in a shower of loud taps on the boards of the pulpit, which responded so smartly that, at last, to my unspeakable relief, they woke me. Look, Hannah, I know we don't get along, but I think that there has been some very horrible things occurring in the Wuthering Heights. Tell me about it. Ah, sweet water. Ah, my throat. That was 2 pages worth of dream. Okay. It's alright, you don't have to know what's happening. Basically, he started reading her the journal of Catherine, I believe Linton? Was her original name? Yes, Catherine Linton. He started reading the journal, but then he sort of fell asleep, and then he had a bit of a nonsense dream about religious trauma. And Joseph beating him. Can I go grab some wool milk, or is the princess going to cry about it? Ah, okay. I suppose it's a good time for a break, hey? We're just almost halfway through. We can carry back on again at past. That should be universal across time zones, right? It's about 20 past, for me at least. But now the question, do I take you with me or do I go and make myself some hot chucky? Isn't the journal private? He has found the journal in an old room that no one is regularly allowed into, and the only reason he's allowed into it is because the cook or the woman working in the kitchens, the only woman working in the kitchens, has let him stay there for the night. And Heathcliff may or Heathcliff may or may not know about it. So the journals have now been found in this room, and they seem to have several different names. So you have Catherine Linton, Catherine Heathcliff, and Catherine... what was it? Catherine Earnshaw, that was the other one, yes. So there's multiple books that are all labeled differently, and they all seem to be journals made by Catherine for different points in her life. So clearly this Catherine character is pretty important, huh? But you can go grab something for yourself. It's getting colder in the night. I know, it's a beautiful 20 degrees, which is actually quite warm from what we've been experiencing. Oh, my mistake, guys. It's 19 degrees. My god, I'm living in freezing, unbearable conditions over here. It's 11 degrees where you are? Oh, terrible. Stay in your lane, bro. I'm not going to your kitchen, weirdo. Okay, fine. There you go. Well, just for that, I'm going to show you something absolutely horrifying. Not what I meant to do, but anyways. Goodbye. Goodbye. Boom. Out of curiosity, how well can you hear the kettle boiling in the background? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome back. I'm back. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna leave again when I have to finish the process of making hot chocolate. Not at all? That's amazing. Even while I'm talking? Ooh, ooh. This is big. This is big news. This is really big news. I don't think I can hear. That's fantastic news. See? Okay, actually, wait. I want to ask people's opinions on this. On a scale of 1 to 10, those of you who have like seen my previous streams and stuff like that, how much better is the mic quality compared to the previous one? Because I've been testing it out with my friends, and I've gotten ranging answers from like, oh yeah, it is better, but like not really, to like, oh, yeah, it's much better, but like you can still definitely tell that it's like a lapel mic. Was it a witch kettle? It's more quiet, yeah. Okay, the mic is more quiet, but like the audio quality, like there's no like clicking and clacking and it's a little quiet though. That's a bit sad. Hang on. I'm not kidding. I have the mic set to 500% volume on OBS. So how's that? Nice and clean signal? That is fantastic to hear. When I was looking for mics, like this is one of the more affordable versions, but they are, oh, what is it actually? Let me tell you. Okay, so it's the DJI Mic Mini 2. DJI, the DJI Mic Mini 2, which is an older version of their like lineup. I believe like the number 3 in the models is out now. And then also the mini is a lot more affordable than like the regular. So I was kind of working on like a budget and kind of figuring out what I could work with. And this seemed like really, really good in all of the reviews. And then I got my hands on it and I was like testing it out through like Audible, and it's not Audition, Adobe Audition, and it was Audible is the other thing. And I just couldn't quite get it to sound much better. I have to turn my volume all the way up so you're more audible. That's rough. Maybe if I put it up to 600. Yeah, it's clearer. Nice. Okay. I think the quality is about the same, maybe a bit smoother. Ah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, that's some of what people have been saying as well. But I figure you guys would be the expert because you do have to sit here and listen to me speak into a mic all the time. And then my big thing was just like the fact that like you can hear the echo, you can hear the sounds of like things outside and that. So like I just wanted to see if there was a way that I could fix that without then making an entire space and soundproofing it, which is something that's a little bit outside of both my wheelhouse and my budget. Yo, we're back. Yes. Okay, hang on. I need to go back and get my hot chocolate. When did you get the new mic so I can compare? This is the first stream I'm doing with the new mic, so you can go straight back to like last week's one and do some comparing. If you would care to. What do you have? I have hot chocolate. I'm gonna be right back though. Hang on, wait. And we're back. Okay, hello. Now I'm trying to decide if I want hot chocolate enough to make it in 30-degree weather. No. Stream is mine again? Not yet, Phoenix. I'm right back. We hit 36 degrees Celsius in Italy. Ooh. Ah, it's rough. Yeah, it is really scary to see how the heat wave has been affecting the northern hemisphere. Yes, it is the northern hemisphere. Anyway, what do I have? I have hot chocolate. It's just the way I like it. Far too sweet. Anyone want a fluffy black kitten? Me, please. Ship it to me in my P.O. box. But also please don't do that. I don't have one. And that's not the only reason. Hey. Ah. Hannah is too happy. What do you mean? Why am I not allowed to be happy? This is so rude. Poor Hannah, just hot chocolate. I am here with cookies and milk in the national suite. I will have you know that I have a freshly baked batch of oatmeal chocolate cookies. And they are fantastic, and you don't have to bake them. You can just make them in a pot. And it is so sweet and so sugary, and there's peanut butter in them, and they taste amazing. And you are so rude. And if you're wondering why I'm happy, it's because I'm looking forward to having one of those when I'm done. Fantastic, question mark. We're evil. So rude. So very rude. Fantastic what, Hannah? Oh, you know. Something, 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 free promotion, something, something. I thought you got them from a nearby bakery when you said freshly baked. They're not freshly baked, but they are very fresh. I made them myself, and they taste good. And it's a great way to get your daily dose of fiber, even though you are also getting far more sugar than you should be getting. So it's a bit of a catch-22. I suddenly want to go find a pack of Nutter Butters. Go, be free. Find one. Yeah, baked stuff. Not quite baked, but it is fresh. Sucrose is dangerous, I know. I had an apple this morning and I've never felt more guilty in my life. It was so sweet. Sorry, that's not the same thing, I know. Okay, I'm back. Little yawn. I wonder if you can get glucose sugar? Isn't it sucrose sugar? Wait, what's the difference between glucose and sucrose? Sucrose. Isn't sucrose fruit sugar? I'm having second thoughts as to my jokes and opinions. Also, has Spotify finished its song? That's so tragic. Welcome back, Spotify. Welcome back, Airwing Marine, who I have to stop using because... Low wave records. Ah, is that why? Sorry, no. I have to stop using Airwing Marine, which is very unfortunate because I really do love the music that we've used in the streams for it. Unfortunately, it is no longer copyright friendly, and by friendly I mean free. One of these days I'm gonna actually get some really nice licensed music that I actually have ownership of. Or, well, not ownership, but you know, I'll have licenses for them. I don't have a license for that, unfortunately. This is gonna be hell, I'm just gonna be doing accents this entire time. Glucose is glucose, sucrose is one glucose, one fructose welded. Oh my god. Good to know it's simple. Let's see. Acquiring the cursed knowledge apes weren't meant to. Oh, sucrose gets stored as fat if you don't exercise it. Glucose is glycogen in the muscles and liver where it doesn't cause problems. Interesting. Okay, and then sucrose is from sugar cane / beets. Fructose is from fruit. That makes sense, yeah. So now here's the real question. Is brown sugar actually healthier for you than white sugar? Because my whole life I've only ever had brown sugar, and it's because I've been told that it's healthier than white sugar. But then I had a conversation with someone who was quite well educated, and much older than me, and he basically said like, nah, it's basically just white sugar that they've just like not done the final process on to make it, like they haven't added like the quote unquote like the bleach or something that makes it white. So it's just like one step removed from white sugar. Yeah, not in a meaningful way. Exactly! My whole life I thought I was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, I could have been buying the cheaper white sugar and just getting as much badness as I already was. My life is a lie. And you know what sucks? Even after I heard that, I still kept buying brown sugar. Because I think now I just have told myself it tastes a certain way and I like it more. White sugar is just brown sugar with the molasses filtered out. That's the thing. It's the brown sugar that I buy is a very like processed brown sugar. Like when some people think brown sugar, especially if you come from like a country where you predominantly only have access to white sugar, white sugar is extremely like grainy, very fine, and then brown sugar is like clumpy and like has molasses in it and like doesn't it like sticks to itself. That's not the brown sugar that like we typically have access to here. Like in equal amounts we have access to white sugar and brown sugar, which are equally as like grainy, like they're as fine as each other. Brown sugar is maybe slightly larger grain sizes compared to the white sugar, but like it doesn't clump together. It's very dry, very shelf stable, and that's what I was saying is like that version of brown sugar is just as bad as the white sugar. That's what I was wondering. Instead of like the fancy stuff that you get that's like in the nice cafes where it's like, we have some brown sugar for you in this lovely little silver bowl, and it's just like clumpy and you can't really like get it out. And anyway, complaining about nothing. Both sugar, eat potato instead. I think there's an untapped potential in potato sweets. And I know I sound insane for saying this, but like I feel like there's a way. Potato is such a versatile food. There has to be a way where you can make like mochi-esque potatoes, and I'm sure it's already been done. I know you can make like gnocchi with potatoes, so like same concept but like sweet, or even just like wrap it in something sweet, and then you just have like the base mochi like covering of the potato starch. Do I sound insane saying that? I've always thought this. You can make so many baked goods with potato flour. Exactly! Sweet potato and normal potato are two different things, you know. No, I'm not talking about sweet potato. I'm talking about like regular ass, normal, they're not normal, but you know what I mean. Like the russet potatoes, the ones that everyone buys like for your stews and your boils and everything, like for your chips. Like that's what I'm talking about. And I think they're called russet potatoes, but anyway, and there has to be a way, and I'm putting it in Immortal and no one can stop me. We're gonna have potato sweets. I don't know, sounds crazy to me. Yeah, the only unfortunate thing is that I have to wait until like way in the future to add potato sweets. Or just set a significant portion of the story in South America. Which, hey, actually. Give me a second. I'll think something through, don't worry. Candy taters. I've eaten sweet potato sweets before. It's nice. Oh, nice. There has to be a way to get sugar out of potatoes. I'm sure it doesn't get done just because sugarcane is easier. I mean, okay, listen, I've eaten raw sugarcane before, and it is just really, like, it's densely packed with, like, the sugar. The sugars. The natural sugars. The sugars everyone likes. Brazilian tala is canon. You have custom continents, just shuffle the crops around. That's the thing. I don't want to differ the actual like crops and environments and like natural environments too much, because then I'm gonna lose track of things and start making these stupid inaccuracies. I want to keep it as close to real life as possible so that I can just do research. Very broad research. I'm not going to be like, what specific thing grows on the coastline of this specific country. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be like, in general, in this kind of area, what happens over here. I'm doing it at least for like Germany and kind of Germany, but like that's kind of where I'm like looking basically for the environment for Immortals first arc. So like I'm gonna try and keep that through. But that means potatoes are in South America, so obviously, of all the different potatoes. Will Turkish Delights be an immortal? Will there be a Turkey? I don't know. I mean, Turkey is kind of on the, oh, what was it? The agricultural belt. So maybe it will be a little bit present, but only in environment only and not in culture, question mark. So does that mean that there even will be a Turkey? Question mark, question mark. What is Tara? Did I say Tara? Tala is my main character from a comic series that I've been working on for a very long time that isn't out yet, but it is going to be out one day. And that's who I keep referring to. I understand it's probably a bit confusing if you've never heard me mention a character called Tala before. If you're part of the Discord, the Patreon, any part of the community on my like general videos and channel, you know who Tala is. I'm really good at marketing. If you can't tell, I'm doing double thumbs up. There's no camera to catch it, so now I'm just embarrassed. Anyway, as I was saying, where were we? Right, Heathcliff. Manifesting for the one day, please, please, please. I know, me too. I'm also manifesting. You and me, same boat. One of us actually has a responsibility to do this, but you and me, same boat. There's new people here, time for shilling. Well, I guess I've already done it. Anyway, don't worry about it. Oh, how do you join the Discord? You can join the Discord by joining the Patreon. You can join any tier at all, including the $1 tier, and you will have access to the Patreon. It is unfortunate that it is for join the Discord through the Patreon. It is unfortunate that it is for Patreon members only, but I like to have it as a space for people who really are excited about the stuff I do, the comic that's coming out, etc, etc, etc. It's completely optional. Please do not feel pressured to do it at all. Thank you very, very much for even asking and considering. Anyway. Do you like how my voice went up by like 2 octaves doing that? Anyway. As I was saying, we haven't even finished a chapter, by the way. We are midway through chapter 3. We have just left off at the point where our POV character, whose name I've already forgotten, has woken up from a nightmare, a religious psychosis nightmare. It's not psychosis, but it is a nightmare. Basically the same thing. Apologies. Oh, I actually did join the Patreon. Still don't know how to join the Discord though. So, okay, hang on. Wait, no. I can help you with this. Let's see. Okay, so if you go to the main page on the Patreon and go a little bit down, the pinned post on the very top of recent posts is a contents page. At the very bottom of the lists of the contents page, there is a Connect Discord option, which should take you to a settings and it links you to a section of the personal settings, which would then let you connect your Discord to your Patreon. And once you've connected the Discord to the Patreon, it will automatically give you the, I believe it gives you the option to then sign, to then have access to the Discord. I'm using all the right words, I'm saying all the right things in the right order. Okay. Fun fact, you can also connect your Spotify and your Vimeo. I've I don't have anything to do with those things, though. That's just if you have other people you support and and they have things associated with those. So have fun with that. Was the POV character ever named? I believe he was at the very beginning. Hang on, let me look. Yes, first page. Mr. Lockwood is what he was referred to. And then I think, yeah, we never got a first name. I don't think we did. Maybe we did, in that brief moment where he was talking about the woman that he didn't fall in love with. Oh, bye, Rosemary. Thank you very, very much for sticking around. And, good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bedbugs bite. Enjoy whatever kind of hot chocolate adjacent things you enjoy. I think it's about time we get started. John Lockwood. I think it's about time we carried on then, hey? Okay. And what was it that had suggested the tremendous tumult? What had played Jabe's part in the row? Merely the branch of a fir tree that touched my lattice, as the blast wailed by and rattled its dry cones against the panes. I listened doubtingly an instant, detected the disturber, then turned and dozed, and dreamt again, if possible still more disagreeably than before. This time I remembered I was lying in the oak closet, and I heard distinctly the gustly wind and the driving of the snow. I heard also the fir bow repeat its teasing sound, and ascribed it to the right cause. But it annoyed me so much that I resolved to silence it, if possible, and I thought I rose and endeavoured to unhasp the casement. The hook was soldered into the staple, a circumstance observed by me when awake, but forgotten. I must stop it, nevertheless, I muttered, knocking my knuckles through the glass. Oh my god. Knocking my knuckles through the glass and stretching an arm out to seize the importunate branch, instead of which my fingers closed on the fingers of a little ice-cold hand. The intense horror of nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in, let me in." "Who are you?" I asked, struggling meanwhile to disengage myself. "Catherine Linton," it replied shiveringly. Why did I think of Linton? I had read Earnshaw 20 times for Linton. "I'm come home. I'd lost my way on the moor." As it spoke, I discerned obscurely a child's face looking through the window. Terror made me cruel, and finding it useless to attempt shaking the creature off, I pulled its wrist onto the broken pane and rubbed it to and fro till the blood ran down and soaked the bedclothes. Still it wailed, "Let me in," and maintained its tenacious gripe, almost maddening me with fear. "How can I said at length. "Let me go if you want me to let you in." The fingers relaxed. I snatched mine through the hole, hurriedly piled the books up in a pyramid against it, and stopped my ears to exclude the lamentable prayer. I seemed to keep them closed above a quarter of an hour yet. The instant I listened again, there was the doleful cry moaning on. "Begone!" I shouted. "I'll never let you in, not if you beg for 20 years. "It's 20 years, mourned the voice. 20 years. I've been away for 20 years. The rat began... The music is very hype compared to what is happening in the scene. The rat began a feeble scratching outside, and the pile of books moved as if thrust forward. I tried to jump up, but could not stir a limb, and so yelled aloud in a frenzy of fright. To my confusion, I discovered the yell was not ideal. Hasty footsteps approached my chamber door. Somebody pushed it open with a vigorous hand, and a light glimmered through the squares at the top of the bed. I sat shuddering yet, and wiping the perspiration from my forehead. The intruder appeared to hesitate and muttered to himself. At last he said in a half-whisper, plainly not expecting an answer, "Is anyone there?" I considered it best to confess my presence, for I knew Heathcliff's accents, and feared he might search further if I kept quiet. With this intention, I turned and opened the panels. I shall not soon forget the effect my action produced. Heathcliff stood near the entrance in his shirt and trousers, with a candle dripping over his fingers, and his face as white as the wall behind him. The first creak of the oak startled him like an electric shock. The light leapt from his hold to a distance of some feet, and his agitation was so extreme that he could hardly pick it up. "It is only your guest, sir," I called out, desirous to spare him the humiliation of exposing his cowardice further. I had the misfortune to scream in my sleep, owing to a frightful nightmare. I'm sorry I disturbed you. Oh, God confound you, Mr. Lockwood. I wish you were at the... commenced my host, settling the candle on a chair because he found it impossible to hold it steady. And who showed you up to this room? He continued, crushing his nails into his palms and grinding his teeth to subdue the maxillary convulsions. Who was it? I've a good mind to turn them out of the house this moment. It was your servant, Zillah, I replied, flinging myself onto the floor and rapidly resuming my garments. I should not care if you did, Mr. Heathcliff. She richly deserves it. I suppose that she wanted to get another proof that the place was haunted, at my expense. Well, it is, swarming with ghosts and goblins. You have reason in shutting it up, I assure you. No one will thank you for a doze in such a den. What do you mean? Asked Heathcliff. And what are you doing? Lie down and finish out the night, since you are here. But for heaven's sake, don't repeat that horrid noise. Nothing could excuse it, unless you were having your throat cut. If the little fiend had gotten at the window, she probably would have strangled me, I returned. I'm not going to endure the persecutions of your hospitable ancestors again. Was not the Reverend James Brandham akin to you on the mother's side? And that minx, Catherine Linton, or Earnshaw, or however she was called, she must have been a changeling, wicked little soul. She told me she had been walking the earth these 20 years, a just punishment for her mortal transgressions, I've no doubt. Scarcely were these words uttered when I recollected the association of Heathcliff's with Catherine's name in the book, which had completely slipped from my memory until thus awakened. I blushed at my inconsideration, but without showing further consciousness of the offence, I hastened to add, The truth is, sir, I passed the first part of the night, and here I stopped afresh. I was about to say pursuing those old volumes, then it would have revealed my knowledge of their written as well as their printed contents, so, correcting myself, I went on. In spelling over the name scratched on that window ledge, a monotonous occupation, calculated to set me asleep, like counting, or... What can you mean by talking in this way to me? Thundered Heathcliff with savage vehemence. How dare you, under my roof? God, he's mad to speak so. And he struck his forehead with rage. I did not know whether to resent this language or pursue my explanation, but he seemed so powerfully affected that I took pity and proceeded with my dreams, affirming I had never heard the appellation of Catherine Linton before, but reading it often overproduced an impression which personified itself when I had no longer my imagination under control. The music does not vibe, indeed. Heathcliff gradually fell back to the shelter of the bed. As I spoke, finally, sitting down almost concealed behind it, I guessed, however, by his irregular and intercepted breathing, that he struggled to vanquish an access of violent emotion. Not liking to show him that I heard the conflict, I continued my toilette rather noiselessly, looking at my watch and soliloquized on the length of the night. Not 3 o'clock yet. I could have taken oath it had been 6. Time stagnates here. We must surely have retired to rest at 8. Always at 9 in winter, and always rise at 4, said my host, suppressing a groan, and, as I fancied by the motion of his shadow's arm, dashing a tear from his eyes. Mr. Lockwood, he added, you may go into my room. You'll only be in the way, coming downstairs so early, and your childish outcry has sent sleep to the devil for me. And for me too, I replied. I'll walk in the yard till daylight, and then I'll be off. And you need not dread a repetition of my intrusion. I am now quite cured of seeking pleasure in society, be it country or town. A sensible man ought to find sufficient company in himself. Delightful company, muttered Heathcliff. Take the candle and go where you please. I shall join you directly. Keep out of the yard, though. The dogs are unchained, and the house, Juno mounts sentinel there. And, nay, you can only ramble about the steps and passages. But away with you. I'll come in 2 minutes. I obeyed, so far as to quit the chamber, when, ignorant where the narrow lobbies led, I stood still and was witness involuntarily to a piece of superstition on the part of my landlord, which belied, oddly, his apparent sense. He got onto the bed and wrenched open the lattice, bursting as he pulled at it into an uncontrollable passion of tears. Come in, he sobbed. Cathy, do come. Oh, do once more. Oh, my heart's darling. Hear me this time. Catherine, at last. The spectre showed a spectre's ordinary caprice. It gave no sign of being, but the snow and wind whirled wildly through, even reaching my station, and blowing out the light. There was such anguish in the gush of grief that accompanied this raving, that my companion made me overlook its folly, and I drew off, half angry to have listened at all. and vexed at having related my ridiculous nightmare since it produced that agony, though why was beyond my comprehension. I descended cautiously to the lower regions and landed in the back kitchen, where a gleam of fire raked compactly together enabled me to rekindle my candle. Nothing was stirring except a brindled grey cat, which crept from the ashes and saluted me with a querulous meow. Meow. Two benches, shaped in sections of a circle, nearly enclosed the hearth. On one of these I stretched myself, and Grimalkin mounted on the other. We were both of us nodding, ere any one invaded our retreat, and then it was Joseph, shuffling down a wooden ladder that had vanished in the roof. Through a trap, the ascent to his garret, I suppose. He cast a sinister look at the little flame, which I had enticed to play between the ribs, swept the cat from its elevation, and bestowing himself in the vacancy, commenced the operation of stuffing a 3-inch pipe with tobacco. My presence in his sanctum was evidently esteemed a piece of impudence too shameful for remark. He silently applied the tube to his lips, folded his arms, and puffed away. I let him enjoy the luxury, unannoyed, and after sucking out the last wreath and heaving a profound sigh, he got up and departed as solemnly as he came. A more elastic footstep entered next, and now I opened my mouth for a good morning, but closed it again, the salutation unachieved, for Hareton Earnshaw was performing his orisons, sotto voce, in a series of curses directed against every object he touched, while he rummaged a corner for a spade or shovel to dig through the drifts. He glanced over the back of the bench, dilating his nostrils, and thought as little of exchanging civilities with me as with my companion, the cat. I guessed by his preparations that egress was allowed, and leaving my hard couch, made a movement to follow him. He noticed this and thrust at an inner door with the end of his spade, imitating by an inarticulate sound that there was the place where I must go, if I changed my locality. It opened into the house where the females were already astir. Zillah urging flakes of flame up by the chimney with a colossal bellows, and Mrs. Heathcliff kneeling on the hearth reading a book by the aid of the blaze. She held her hand interposed between the furnace heat and her eyes, and seemed absorbed in her occupation, desisting from it only to chide the servant for covering her with sparks, or to push away a dog, now and then, that snoozled its nose over forwardly into her face. Snoozled I did read correctly, by the way. I was surprised to see Heathcliff there also. He stood by the fire, his back towards me, just finishing a stormy scene to poor Zillah, who ever and anon interrupted her labour to pluck up the corner of her apron and heave an indignant groan. "And you worthless," he broke out as I entered, turning to his daughter-in-law and employing an epithet as harmless as duck or sheep, but generally represented by a dash. "There you are at your idle tricks again. The rest of them do earn their bread. You live on my charity. Put your trash away and find something to do. You shall pay me for the plague of having you eternally in my sight. Do you hear, damnable jade?" "I'll put my trash away because you can make me, if I refuse," answered the young lady, closing her book and throwing it on a chair. "But I'll not do anything, though you should swear your tongue out, except what I please." Heathcliff lifted his hand, and the speaker sprang to a safer distance, obviously acquainted with its weight. Having no desire to be entertained by a cat-and-dog combat, I stepped forward briskly, as if eager to partake the warmth of the hearth, and innocent of any knowledge of the interrupted dispute. Each had enough decorum to suspend further hostilities. Heathcliff placed his fists out of temptation into his pockets. Mrs. Heathcliff curled her lip and walked to a seat far off, where she kept her word by playing the part of a statue during the remainder of my stay. That was not long. I declined joining their breakfast, and at the first gleam of dawn took an opportunity of escaping into the free air, now clear and still and cold as impalpable ice. My landlord hallooed for me to stop ere I reached the bottom of the garden, and offered to accompany me across the moor. It was well he did, for the whole hill-back was one billowy white ocean, the swells and falls not indicating corresponding rises and depressions in the ground. Many pits, at least, were filled to a level, and entire ranges of mounds, the refuse of the quarries, blotted from the chart which my yesterday's walk left pictured in my mind. I had remarked on one side of the road, at intervals of 6 or 7 yards, that a line of upright stones continued through the whole length of the barren. These were erected and daubed with lime on purpose to serve as guides in the dark, and also when a fall like the present confounded the deep swamps on either hand with the firmer path. But excepting a dirty dot pointing up, there and there, all traces of their existence had otherwise vanished, and my companion found it necessary to warn me frequently to steer on the right or the left, when I imagined I was following correctly the windings of the road. We exchanged little conversation, and he halted at the entrance of Thrushcross Park, saying I could make no error there. Our adieus were limited to a hasty bow, and when I pushed forward, trusting in my own resources, for the porter's lodge is untenanted as yet. The distance from the gate to the Grange is 2 miles. I believe I managed to make it 4, what with losing myself among the trees and sinking up to the neck in snow, a predicament which only those who have experienced it can appreciate. At any rate, whatever were my wanderings, the clock chimed 12 as I entered the house, and what gave exactly an hour for every mile of the usual way from Wuthering Heights. My human fixture and her satellites rushed to welcome me, exclaiming tumultuously they had completely given me up. Everybody conjectured that I perished last night, and they were wondering how they must set about the search for my remains. I bid them be quiet now that they saw me returned, and benumbered to my very heart, I dragged upstairs, whence, after putting on dry clothes and pacing to and fro 30 or 40 minutes to restore the animal heat, I am adjourned to my study, feeble as a kitten, almost too much so to enjoy the cheerful fire and smoking coffee which the servant had prepared for my refreshment. And that is the end of chapter 3. I'm finishing my hot chocolate. You can't stop me. If I leave it any longer, it'll get cold. The prose is very difficult to understand. Just in the way that it's written, you can see that I'm sort of tripping up on my sentences a lot more than I was with the Time Machine. The sentences are quite a bit longer. There's a lot of commas and em dashes and just a lot of sort of the sentences just kind of keep going. The dialogue as well is very of the period. Like in the conversation between Heathcliff and his daughter-in-law in the while she was reading in front of the fire. She says, "But I'll not do anything, though you should swear your tongue out, except what I please." So, like, in modern English, this would probably be something more like, you can swear your tongue out as much as you like, but I'll not do anything except what I please, right? Like, that's more understandable just to a modern ear. But that's just not the way that a lot of the sentences and speech is structured. Just in the way that it was written at the time. This is, I think, the oldest book that we've read so far. This is 1847, so it is quite... I mean, this was almost 30 years... So it's 30 years before... Am I remembering? It's 30 or 20 years before The Time Machine was written. However, the story itself is set in 1801. So I'm not entirely sure if maybe it's written in the style of, you know, the kind of language that would have been popular in 1801, or if it's written more in like the style of the time of 1847. There's like a 50-year gap there. So it's an interesting thing to look into afterwards, maybe. Quite fun. Another reason to hate Victorians. There was already casual sexism too. I actually haven't even been addressing it. Like the way he treats his daughter-in-law and all that. Like the way the main character talks about her as well. Absolutely fascinating. It's actually interesting. It's very hard for me to discern whether the kind of sexism you find in Victorian novels is written intentionally to portray the character as sexist, or if it is just an unfortunate product of the time, right? And my usual indicator for this is the author a woman or a man, which is not perfect. That's not a perfect way of measuring that kind of stuff. And it could just be my own bias leaking out in that way. But I do... I do have a inclination to assume that maybe the POV character and Heathcliff himself are written to be very flawed in their own way. In the very first descriptor we have for our main character, he talks about how he's not deserving of love because he liked a woman, and then as soon as she realized that he liked him and tried to return her his affections, which she was into him too, as soon as she actually tried to like reach out to him and have like an actual relationship with him, he immediately like shrunk away, and just the relationship just like died before it even began, because she just kind of assumed, oh, I guess he didn't like me, and then moved on with her life, and he's like beating himself up because he just didn't have the courage to say anything. So he's a real bear if you've seen Obsession, which is very harsh criticism towards him just based off of one exchange, but I feel like that's quite a bit of character work, character exposition for our POV character. So I have the inclination to believe that maybe they are written to be flawed characters in the way that they treat women. However, I could be incorrect about that. That is just my headcanon for right now. I haven't finished the book, so... The ghost story aspect was quite fun. I only ever read the first two. I got the book... When did I get this? It was, I want to say March-ish. I went to a market, an open market, and there was a secondhand bookshop, and so I got a couple of books there. I also got Robinson Crusoe, so that's probably going to be on the polls at some point. But yeah, so this is one of the books that I haven't like actually read through. I just read the first two chapters going into it, and then I was like, wow, this is really slow and meandering. And the characters kind of all suck. This would be a great book to read on stream. Without giving it much thought, clearly. But yeah, the ghost story aspect is very interesting. I wonder if that's going to continue, or if it's more of a hook to show. I'm very interested in the fact that the POV character has now left. He's back at home. He clearly hates the entire Heathcliff family and household. So I don't think he's gonna go back of his own accord. I'm sure we'll find out in chapter 4. Because clearly the story is going to continue. He has to find out more about Catherine. Unless we do a time skip? I'm not entirely sure. I know very little about Wuthering Heights. I know nothing about it. Like I said, I've never seen the movie. I've never read the book. I'm going into this relatively blind. Wikisource has the whole text for this book and must have more non-copyrighted work for you to use. I'm sure. Would be nice, actually. Meandry mentioned, no. You could find other non-copyrighted text for books and stories that you wanted to read in the Wikisource, although it probably isn't as cool as having a book in hands. That's the thing. I like the book. I like having paper. Look at that. Wow. I'm bad at media literacy. What's the story even about? So at the moment, the story is about Lockwood, our POV character, who has just moved in as a tenant on a large manor, well, a relatively large countryside manor house. And his landlord is Heathcliff. Heathcliff is a very old man in his 40s. And in his house, he has his daughter-in-law and another man who we are not sure of the relation to him. And what was his name? Earnshaw. It was something with an H as well, wasn't it? Harriton Earnshaw, that was it. So he lives with these three people, along with the servants of the house, Zilla and Joseph. And they all seem to really hate each other. It does not seem to be a good time. Everyone's sniping at each other verbally. Everyone is very grumpy with one another. Heathcliff is implied to be physically abusive towards his daughter-in-law. His son appears to not be here, so he might be dead, he might be somewhere else. We do not know as of yet. But all we know is that he is there with the daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law is married to his son is not there. And he seems to really resent her for having to, well, he resents her existence, which is quite interesting. Our POV character went over for tea to try and be neighborly, and accidentally got caught in a snowstorm that prevented him from going home, during which he realized that he actually hated everyone in the house and would rather very much leave, but unfortunately he could not. So they put him to spend the night in an old, dusty, abandoned room where he found a bunch of journals that were kept by a woman called Catherine. And Catherine has had 3 names, Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Linton, and Catherine Heathcliff. So we aren't entirely sure what that means, but based on my knowledge of the story, it's probably because that's her maiden name, and then Heathcliff was her name when she was married. Linton, maiden name, Heathcliff, adult name. There were also some other characters that she mentioned in her journals, which I'm not entirely sure are who they are yet. I'm sure we'll find that out later. And yeah, he then had a nightmare that she was, the ghost of Catherine Linton was outside his window, or perhaps he actually experienced it. The text seems to say that he did actually experience it. And he scared the living daylights out of Heathcliff, who didn't know he was in the room, went in to go see who was screaming, thought that it was Catherine back from the dead, or Catherine's ghost, and got shocked and horrified when it was actually his awful tenant who came over for an unexpected sleepover and who he doesn't want there anymore. And it seems like he's mourning this Catherine quite deeply. I would say 40 is not even middle-aged. A very old man in his 40s. When you think of a romance masculine lead, does 40 spring to mind? And we're not talking Twilight rules, okay? Twilight is an outlier and should not have been counted. Do we think of men in their 40s? I hate to say it, it's not true, but I still think of my father as someone in his 40s. I think very much not in his 40s. I still think of him as someone in his 40s, so apologies if that's not the case. He's in fact past his 40s, but that does not matter. This book makes me think of that one quote, I know writers who use subtext and they are all cowards. So hear me out, right? It's Victorian England. You're writing a story. You're a woman, so you can only write a romance. Because it's Victorian, you have to have the story told like third hand through a POV character after everything has already happened. And he just has to get like caught up through basically elaborate campfire stories. It's a story about love, it's a story about loss, it's a story about longing, it's a story about hatred and inequality and abuse. It's not a good story, it's a very sad story. And you're basically just like limited by all the rules of the standards of the time for writing and structuring fiction. This is my interpretation, by the way. I'm not a scholar in Victorian fiction by any means. I've just read a handful of Victorian novels. So this is my assumption. I think she's doing pretty good given what she's got. I will say the introduction is very slow. We're still just kind of getting like hints and tidbits of like the actual meat of the story. There's just a lot of intrigue that we're kind of leading into. It definitely isn't the kind of story that would be published today, because you've got to have like a very punchy start to a lot of modern fiction. But it is calm in a certain way. I do appreciate older fiction for being slow to start, and then you get the pace builds and builds and things get faster and faster, and then all of a sudden you're hooked on it and you're reading all the way through and you're basically done already because it was just so exciting, even though you felt like you still had so much to slog through. And I'm hoping that that's what happens with this book, but it is unfortunate that we only have a limited amount of time to read this. We've only got 45 minutes left. I dislike that we don't do more older protags. Yeah, I agree. What's a good example of an older protagonist? The new Spider-Man Noir. That's an older protagonist. But that's kind of the only recent example I can really think of. Does Ryland Grace count? Because by the end of the movie slash book, he is quite old. Old as in like middle age. I guess it doesn't count though, because, you know, you're thinking of a local hot man actor, whatever his face is. The Barbie actor, you know. One day I want to have one of my protags be an elderly woman. Ah! Isn't Grace like 35? I think he starts out 35 and then he gets quite a bit older. There's quite a few, like, quite a bit of time passing throughout the movie slash book. Does it count if they start young? I don't think so. I think it's about how they feel. It's about the vibe. It's about, if your story is about time passing and people changing, then I think they should definitely count at all ages. I've been reading this comic called Immortal. The main character, whose name is Tala, is like 3,000 years old. Is that old? No, because the body is still young and the mind is still young. Kind of, technically. The mind will age, but the body will stay the same. I feel like it's cheating. Like, you still get to have your young protagonist, but they're just smarter. At that point, it's basically wish fulfillment. Chronologically older because of time dilation. Oh wait, the main character of Interstellar is technically 130 by the end of the movie. Yeah. And he has a dad bod. And he has a dad bod. Ernest Hemingway did irreparable damage to the older protag genre. What about Freerin? She's old, I guess? Yeah, but it's the same logic as Tala. Like, you still have a young-looking character. They just happen to be mentally very, very old. I feel like that's cheating, right? And even then, like, it's elves. Like, how do they age mentally? I really like it how in Bannerlord, when you pick your character, there's an encouraging blurb of text regardless of the age you choose. Oh, that's nice. Interstellar is a movie? I thought it was a video game. I don't think there's a video game called Interstellar. There might be. I don't know. I don't know every game. Indeed. Okay. I'm done with my hot chocolate. Okay, now I'm done with my hot chocolate. Okay. Ooh. Final stretch, gang. And let's go. We'll see if we can finish chapter 4. I'm not sure about chapter 5. I think that might be a bit too hopeful. Actually, no, maybe it won't be. I'm kind of looking through the pages. Yeah, maybe we'll be done with chapter 5 by the end of the stream. Okay. Moving on. Chapter 4. What vain weathercocks we are. Fantastic opening line. I, who had determined to hold myself independent of all social intercourse, and thanked my stars that at length I had lighted on a spot where it was next to impracticable. I, weak wretch, after maintaining till dusk a struggle with low spirits and solitude, was finally compelled to strike my colours, and under pretence of gaining information concerning the necessities of my establishment, I desired Mrs. Dean, when she brought in supper, to sit down while I ate it, hoping sincerely she would prove a regular gossip, and either rouse me to animation or lull me to sleep by her talk. You have lived here a considerable time, I commenced. Did you not say 16 years? 18, sir. 18, sir. Oh no. I came when the mistress was married. Oh, that's worse. I don't think I'm gonna do that one. 18, older woman. 18, sir. No, that's just Heathcliff. Okay, fine, it doesn't matter. 18, sir. I came when the mistress was married to wait on her. After she died, the master retained me for the housekeeper. Indeed, there ensued a pause. She was not a gossip, I feared, unless about her own affairs, and those could hardly interest me. However, having studied for an interval, with a fist on either knee and a cloud of meditation over her ruddy countenance, she ejaculated, "Ah, times are greatly changed since then." "Yes," I remarked, "you've seen a good many alterations, I suppose." "I have, and troubles too," she said. "Oh, I'll turn the talk on to my landlord's family," I thought to myself. A good subject to start, and that pretty girl widow, I should like to know her history, whether she be a native of the country or, as is more probable, an exotic that the surely in... And, okay, I see, okay. Very poorly phrased, but not outright awful. An exotic that the surly indigene will not recognize for kin. With this intention, I asked Mrs. Dean why Heathcliff let Thrushcross Grange and preferred living in a situation and residence so much inferior. "Is he not rich enough to keep the estate in good order?" I inquired. "Rich, sir," she returned. "He has, nobody knows what money, and every year it increases. Yes, yes, he's rich enough to live in a finer house than this, but he's very near, close-handed, and if he had meant to flit to Thrushcross Grange as soon as he heard of a good tenant, he could not have borne to miss the chance of getting a few hundreds more. It is strange people should be so greedy, when they are alone in the world. He had a son, it seems." "Yes, he had one. He is dead." "And that young lady, Mrs. Heathcliff, is his widow?" "Yes." "Where did she come from originally?" "Why, sir, she is my late master's daughter. Catherine Linton was her maiden name. I nursed her, poor thing. I did wish Mr. Heathcliff would remove here, and then we might have been together again." I'm sorry, my voice hurts so bad doing that. J.K. Rowling must love this book. I did wish Mr. Heathcliff would remove her, and then we might have been together again." "What, Catherine Linton?" I exclaimed, astonished. But a minute's reflection convinced me it was not my ghostly Catherine. "Then," I continued, "my predecessor's name was Linton?" "It was." "And who is that Earnshaw, Hareton Earnshaw, who lives with Mr. Heathcliff? Are they relations?" "No, he is the late Mrs. Linton's nephew." "The young lady's cousin, then?" "Yes, and and her husband was her cousin also, one on the mother's, the other on the father's side. Heathcliff married Mr. Linton's sister." Oh god, hang on, wait, okay, I need to, hang on, recap. Okay. Two Catherine Lintons. The young Catherine Linton, who is his daughter-in-law, and the old Catherine Linton, who was dead. Hareton Earnshaw is the late Mrs. Linton's nephew. The young lady's cousin. Okay, so they're cousins. And her husband was her cousin also. Oh, Jesus. And her husband was her cousin also, one on the mother's, the other on the father's side. Heathcliff married Mr. Linton's sister. Heathcliff married... What? Okay. Alright, there's a family tree on Wikipedia. Oh, thank God. Okay, I'll look at that afterwards. I see the house at Wuthering Heights has Earnshaw carved over the front door. Are they an old family? Very old, sir. And Hareton is the last of them, as our Miss Cathy is of us. I mean, of the Lintons. Have you been to Wuthering Heights? I beg pardon for asking, but I should like to hear how she is. Mrs. Heathcliff? She looked very well, and very handsome, yet, I think, not very happy. Oh dear, I don't wonder. And how do you like the master? A rough fellow, rather, Mrs. Dean. Is not that his character? Sorry. And hang on, I'm gonna go look at I'm looking at the family tree now, actually. Okay. Oh, I see. Oh, English teachers love this one. Okay. Well, now I feel bad for Heathcliff. Okay. Wait, so then... Was there not another Catherine? Okay, I'm getting confused. I need to read the book and then I will know. If I read the book, all shall be revealed. I may be lost, don't worry, I'm equally as lost. We'll figure it out together. Okay, so we're learning more about the family tree of Heathcliff's family. And it seems like it is quite the tragic circumstances. The late Lady Linton's husband was her cousin also, one on the mother's. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so that was Catherine Earnshaw, who then married... Okay, so Catherine Earnshaw, who was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Earnshaw, married Edgar Linton and became Catherine Linton. So we have Earnshaw, Linton, and then she had a daughter with them who is Cathy Linton, who unfortunately is the daughter of two cousins, which is deeply unfortunate. Okay. Okay. Oh, and how did you like the master? A rough fellow, rather, Mrs. Dean. Is that not his character? Rough as a saw edge and hard as whinstone. The less you meddle with him, the better. He must have had some ups and downs in life to make him such a churl. Do you know anything of his history? It's a cuckoo's, sir. I know all about it, except where he was born, and who were his parents, and how he got his money at first. And Harriton has been cast out like an unfledged dunnock. The unfortunate lad is the only one in all this parish that does not guess how he has been cheated. Oof, okay. Well, Mrs. Dean, it will be a charitable deed to tell me something of my neighbours. I feel I shall not rest if I go to bed, so be good enough to sit and chat an hour. Oh, certainly, sir. I'll just fetch a little sewing, and then I'll sit as long as you please. But you've caught cold, I saw you shivering, and you must have some gruel to drive it out. The worthy woman bustled off, and I crouched nearer the fire. My head felt hot, and the rest of me chill. Moreover, I was excited, almost to a pitch of foolishness, through my nerves and brain. This caused me to feel not uncomfortable, but rather fearful, as I am still of serious effects from the incidents of today and yesterday. She returned presently, bringing a smoking basin and a basket of work, and having placed the former on the hob, drew in her seat, evidently pleased to find me so companionable. Before I came to live here, she commenced. I'm not doing the voice. Before I came to live here, she commenced, waiting no further invitation to her story. I was almost always at Wuthering Heights. Can I do like a lighter version of it? I was almost always at Wuthering Heights because my mother had nursed Mr. Hindley Earnshaw. That was Harriton's father, and I got used to playing with the children. I ran errands too, and helped to make hay, and hung about the farm ready for anything that anybody would set me to. One fine summer morning, it was the beginning of harvest, I remember, Mr. Earnshaw, the old master, came downstairs dressed for a journey, and after he had told Joseph what was to be done during the day, he turned to Hindley and Cathy and me, for I sat eating my porridge with them, and he said, speaking to his son, "Now, my bonny man, I'm going to Liverpool today. What shall I bring you? You may choose what you like, only let it be little, for I shall walk there and back, 60 miles each way. That's a long spell." Hindley named a fiddle, and then he asked Miss Cathy. She was hardly 6 years old, but she could ride any horse in the stable, and she chose a whip. He did not forget me, for he had a kind heart, though he was rather severe sometimes. He promised to bring me a pocketful of apples and pears, and then he kissed his children good-bye and set off. It seemed a long while to us all, the 3 days of his absence, and often did little Cathy ask when he would be home. Mrs. Earnshaw expected him by supper-time on the 3rd evening, and she put the meal off hour after hour. There were no signs of his coming, however, and at last the children got tired of running down to the gate to look. Then it grew dark. She would have had them to bed, but they begged sadly to be allowed to stay up. And just about 11 o'clock, the door latch was raised quietly, and in stepped the master. He threw himself into a chair, laughing and groaning, and bid them all stand off, for he was nearly killed. He would not have such another walk for the 3 kingdoms. And at the end of it, to be flighted to death, he said, opening his great coat, which he held bundled up in his arms. See here, wife, I was never so beaten with anything in my life, but you mustn't take it as a gift of God, though it's as dark always as if it came from the devil. We crowded round, and over Miss Cathy's head I had a peep at a dirty, ragged, black-haired child, big enough both to walk and talk. Indeed, its face looked older than Catherine's, yet when it was set on its feet, it only stared round and repeated over and over again some gibberish that nobody could understand. I was frightened, and Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling it out the doors. She did fly up, asking how we could fashion to bring that gypsy brat into the house when they had their own bairns to feed and fend for, what he meant to do with it, and whether they were mad. The master tried to explain the latter, but he was really half dead with fatigue, and all that I could make out amongst their scolding was a tale of his seeing it starving and houseless and as good as dumb in the streets of Liverpool, where he picked it up and inquired for its owner. The it pronouns are pretty intense. Not a soul knew to whom it belonged, he said, and his money and time being both limited, he thought it better to take it home with him at once, than run into vain expenses there, because he was determined he would not leave it as he found it. When the conclusion was that my mistress grumbled himself calm, and Mr. Earnshaw told me to wash it and give it clean things and let it sleep with the children, Hindley and Cathy contented themselves with looking and listening till peace was restored. Then both began searching their father's pockets for the presents he had promised them. The former was a boy of 14, but when he drew out what had been a fiddle crushed to morsels in the great coat, he blubbered aloud, and Cathy, when she learnt the master had lost her whip in attending on the stranger, showed her humour by grinning and spitting at the stupid little thing, earning for her pains a sound blow from her father to teach her cleaner manners. Jesus. They entirely refused to have it in bed with them, or even in their room, and I had no more sense, so I put it on the landing of the stairs, hoping it might be gone on the morrow. By chance, or else attracted by hearing his voice, it crept into Mr. Earnshaw's door, and there he found it on quitting his chamber. Inquiries were made as to how it got there. I was obliged to confess, and in recompense for my cowardice and inhumanity, was sent out of the house. This was Heathcliff's first introduction to the family. On coming back a few days afterwards, for I did not consider my banishment perpetual, I found they had christened him Heathcliff. It was the name of a son who died in childhood, and it has served him ever since, both for Christian and surname. Miss Cathy and he were now very thick, but Hindley hated him, and to say the truth, I did the same, and we plagued and went on with him shamefully, for I wasn't reasonable enough to feel my injustice, and the mistress never put in a word on his behalf when she saw him wronged. He seemed sullen, a patient child, hardened perhaps to ill treatment. He would stand Hindley's blows without winking or shedding a tear, and my pinches moved him only to draw in a breath and open his eyes as if he had hurt himself by accident, and nobody was to blame. God. This endurance made old Earnshaw furious when he discovered his son persecuting the poor fatherless child, as he called him. He took to Heathcliff strangely, believing all he said. For that matter, he said precious little, and generally the truth, and petting him up far above Cathy, who was too mischievous and wayward for a favourite. So, from the very beginning, he bred bad feeling in the house, and at Mrs. Earnshaw's death, which happened in less than 2 years after, the young master had learnt to regard his father as an oppressor rather than a friend, and Heathcliff as an usurper of his parents' affections and his privileges, and he grew bitter and brooding over these injuries. I sympathized a while, but when the children fell ill of the measles and I had to tend them and take on me the cares of a woman, at once I changed my ideas. Heathcliff was dangerously sick, and while he lay at the worst, he could have had me constantly by his pillow. I suppose he felt I did a good deal for him, and he hadn't wit to guess that I was compelled to do it. However, I will say this, he was the quietest child that ever nurse watched over. The difference between him and the others forced me to be less partial. Cathy and her brother harassed me terribly. He was as uncomplaining as a lamb, though hardness, not gentleness, made him give trouble. He got through, and the doctor affirmed it was in a great measure owing to me, and praised me for my care. I was vain of his commendations, and softened towards those being by whose means I earned them, and thus Hindley lost his last ally. Still, I couldn't dote on Heathcliff, and I wondered often what my master saw to admire so much in the sullen boy, who, never, to my recollection, repaid his indulgence by any sign of gratitude. He was not insolent to his benefactor, he was simply insensible, though knowing perfectly the hold he had on his heart, and conscious he had only to speak and all the house would be obliged to bend to his wishes. At an instance, I remember Mr. Earnshaw once bought a couple of colts at the parish fair, and gave the lads each one. Heathcliff took the handsomest, but it soon fell lame, and, when he discovered it, he said to Hindley, "You must exchange horses with me. I don't like mine, and if you won't, I shall tell your father of the 3 thrashings you've given me this week, and show him my arm, which is black to the shoulder." Hindley put out his tongue and cuffed him over the ears. "You'd better do it at once," he persisted, escaping to the porch. They were in the stable. In brackets, they were in the stable. "You will have to, and if I speak of these blows, you'll get them again with interest." "Off, dog!" cried Hindley, threatening him with an iron weight used for weighing potatoes and hay. "Throw it," he replied, standing still, "and then I'll tell how you boasted that you would turn me out of doors as soon as he died, and see whether he will not turn you out directly." Hindley threw it, hitting him on the breast, and down he fell, but staggered up immediately, breathless and white. And had not I prevented it, he would have gone just so to the master and got full revenge by letting his condition plead for him, intimating who had caused it. "Take my colt, gypsy, then," said the young Earnshaw, "and I pray that he may break your neck. Take him, and be damned, you beggarly interloper, and wheedle my father out of all he has. Only afterwards show him what you are, imp of Satan, and take that, I hope he'll kick out your brains." Heathcliff had gone to loose the beast, and shift to it his own stall. He was passing behind it when Hindley finished his speech by knocking him under his feet, and without stopping to examine whether his hopes were fulfilled, ran away as fast as he could. Sorry. I needed to comprehend what I was reading. I was surprised to witness how coolly the child gathered himself up and went on with his intention, exchanging saddles and all, and then sitting down on a bundle of hay to overcome the qualm which the violent blow occasioned, before he entered the house. I persuaded him easily to let me lay the blame of his bruises on the horse. He minded little what tale was told, since he had what he wanted. He complained so seldom indeed of such stirs as these, that I really thought him not vindictive. I was deceived completely, as you will hear. In the course of time, Mr. Earnshaw began to fail. He had been active and healthy, yet his strength left him suddenly. And when he was confined to the chimney corner, he grew grievously irritable. A nothing vexed him, and suspected slights of his authority nearly threw him into fits. This was especially to be remarked if any one attempted to impose upon or domineer over his favourite. He was painfully jealous lest a word should be spoken amiss to him, seeming to have got into his head the notion that, because he liked Heathcliff, all hated and longed to do him an ill turn. It was a disadvantage to the lad, for the kinder among us did not wish to fret the master, so we humoured his partiality, and that humouring was rich nourishment to the child's pride and black tempers. Still, it became in a manner necessary. Twice or thrice Hindley's manifestations of scorn, while his father was near, roused the old man to a fury. He seized his stick to strike him, and shook with rage that he could not do it. At last our curate, we had a curate then, who made the living answer by teaching the little... we had a curate then who made the living answer by teaching the little Lintons and Earnshaws and farming his bit of land himself. Close brackets. He advised that the young man should be sent to college, and Mr. Earnshaw agreed, though with a heavy spirit, for he said Hindley was naught and would never thrive as where he wandered. I hoped heartily that we should have peace now. It hurt me to think the master should be made uncomfortable by his own good deed. I fancy the discontent of age and disease arose from his family disagreements, as he would have it that it did. Really, you know, sir, it was in his sinking frame. Okay, I couldn't read. Hang on. I hoped heartily we should have peace now. It hurt me to think the master should be made uncomfortable by his own good deed. I fancy the discontent of age and disease arose from his family disagreements, as he would have it that it did. Really, you know, sir, it was in his sinking frame. Okay, she's speaking to Lockwood in that sentence, obviously. Okay. We might have got on tolerably, notwithstanding, but for 2 people, Miss Cathy and Joseph the servant, you saw him, I dare say, up yonder. He was, and is yet, most likely, the wearisomest, self-righteous farcy that ever ran. Wait, is that a... I think I've maybe heard that word like twice in my life. Uh-oh, okay, never mind. It's even spelt interestingly. Okay. That ever ransacked a Bible to rake the promises to himself and fling the curses on his neighbours. By his knack of ceremonizing and pious discoursing, he contrived to make a great impression on Mr. Earnshaw, and the more feeble the master became, the more influence he gained. He was relentless in worrying him about his soul's concerns and about ruling his children rigidly. He encouraged him to regard Hindley as a reprobate, and night after night he regularly grumbled out a long string of tales against Heathcliff and Catherine, always minding to flatter Earnshaw's weakness by heaping the heaviest blame on the last. Certainly she had ways with her such as I never saw a child take up before, and she put all of us past our patience 50 times and oftener in a day. From the hour she came downstairs till the hour she went to bed, we had not a minute's security that she wouldn't be in mischief. Her spirits were always at high water mark, her tongue always going, singing, laughing, and plaguing everybody who would not do the same. A wild wick slip she was, but she had the bonniest eye and sweetest smile and lightest foot in the parish. And after all, I believe she meant no harm. For when once she made you cry in good earnest, it seldom happened that she would not keep you company, and oblige you to be quiet that you might comfort her. She was much too fond of Heathcliff. The greatest punishment we could invent for her was to keep her separate from him. Yet she got chided more than any of us on his account. In play she liked exceedingly to act the little mistress, using her hands freely and commanding her companions. She did so to me, but I would not bear slapping and ordering, and so I let her know. Now Mr. Earnshaw did not understand jokes from his children. He had always been strict and grave with them, and Catherine, on her part, had no idea why her father should be crosser and less patient in his ailing condition than when he was in his prime. His peevish reproofs awakened in her a naughty delight to provoke him. She was never so happy as when we were all scolding her at once, and she defying us with her bold, saucy look and her ready words, turning Joseph's religious curses into ridicule, baiting me, and doing just what her father hated most, showing how her pretended insolence, which he thought was real, had more power over Heathcliff than his kindness, how the boy would do her bidding in anything, and his only when it suited his own inclination. After behaving as badly as possible all day, she sometimes came fondling in to make it up at night. "Nay, Cathy," the old man would say, "I cannot love thee. Thou'rt worse than thy brother. Go, say thy prayers, child, and ask God's pardon. I doubt thy mother and I must rue that we have ever reared thee." That made her cry at first, and then, being repulsed, continually hardened her, and she laughed as if I told her to say she was sorry for her faults and begged to be forgiven. But the hour came at last that ended Mr. Earnshaw's troubles on earth. He died quietly in his chair one October evening, seated by the fireside. A high wind blustered round the house and roared in the chimney. It sounded wild and stormy, yet it was not cold, and we were all together. I, a little removed from the hearth, busy at my knitting, and Joseph reading his Bible near the table, for the servants generally sat in the house then, after their work was done. Miss Cathy had been sick, and that had made her still. She leant against her father's knee, and Heathcliff was lying on the floor with his head in her lap. I remember the master, before he fell into a doze, stroking her bonny hair. It pleased him rarely to see her gentle, and saying, "Why canst thou not always be a good lass, Cathy?" And she turned her face up to his, and laughed, and answered, "Why cannot you always be a good man, father?" But as soon as she saw him vexed again, she kissed his hand, and said she would sing him to sleep. She began singing very low, till his fingers dropped from hers, and his head sank on his breast. Then I told her to hush, and not stir for fear she should wake him. We all kept as mute as mice a full half-hour, and should have done longer, only Joseph, having finished his chapter, got up and said that he must rouse the master for prayers in bed. He stepped forward and called him by name, and touched his shoulder, but he would not move. So he took the candle and looked at him. I thought there was something wrong as he set down the light, and seizing the children each by an arm, whispered them to frame upstairs and make little din. They might pray alone that evening. He had something to do. "I shall bid father good night first," said Catherine, putting her arms around his neck before we could hinder her. The poor thing discovered her loss directly. She screamed out, "Oh, he's dead! Heathcliff, he's dead!" And they both set up a heart-breaking cry. I joined my wail to theirs, loud and bitter, but Joseph asked what we could be thinking of to roar in that way over a saint in heaven. He told me to put on my cloak and run to Gimmerton for the doctor and the parson. I could not guess the use that either would be of then. However, I went through wind and rain and brought one, the doctor, back with me. The other said he would come in the morning. Leaving Joseph to explain matters, I ran to the children's room. Their door was ajar. I saw they had never laid down, though it was past midnight, but they were calmer and did not need me to console them. The little souls were comforting each other with better thoughts than I could have hit on. No parson in the world ever pictured heaven so beautifully as they did in their innocent talk. And while I sobbed and listened, I could not help wishing we were all there safe together. And that's the end of chapter 5. What do you think? Reading comprehension, gang? We have 15 minutes left, so I can maybe just get us through one more chapter. It's only 4 pages. The door was ajar. I thought it was a door. Ha ha ha. It's a good backstory, isn't it? And you can clearly see the bias in the storyteller as well, which is quite interesting. Hoi. Okay, one more sip of water and then we're chugging through. Pushing through. Didn't pay attention, give me the Brontë of the Brontë of it. Mr. Earnshaw, he adopted a young boy. He named him Heathcliff. Heathcliff was very poor and very sad, and there was an older brother, and the brother abused him horribly, and the maid didn't like him, and the mom didn't like him. The only person in the whole house who seemed to actually like him was the father, Mr. Earnshaw, and his daughter, Cathy. But then the mother died, and the brother got sent away to boarding school, I believe it was, or military school, or none of the above. It was college. He got sent away to college, and was no longer a problem. So basically, Cathy and Heathcliff ran the house, but their father was very ill and very sick. And when he was ill and sick, he became very bitter and very rude and very crass. Catherine caused a lot of trouble, absolute destructive force throughout the house. And she had Heathcliff wrapped around her little finger. And it seems like she and her father kept playing him for, well, using Heathcliff as a plaything, which is a very interesting angle for the story to take. And I can't help but feel that maybe there's some symbolism there between the dogs and Heathcliff, the dogs in the beginning of the story and Heathcliff himself, which would be quite interesting. In fact, Hindley referred to Heathcliff as a dog specifically, which would be quite cool. I could be wrong though. I haven't finished the book. This sort of family dynamic happens a lot even today. Absolutely. It's a lot of the things that are very universal in like older stories is the human relationship factor. Well, factor, I say as if it's like a thing. It's the human relationships. It's Odysseus's desire to return home to his family who he loves. It's in this one, it's this dysfunctional family that's broken at the edges and still kind of hold together through shared trauma and lack of seeking anything better, and they just kind of live in the way that they are, and everything's broken and bad and awful. What else? So far everybody is just abusing each other. Why is this book good? I don't know. I guess we'll have to finish it. Anyway, yeah, it's something we would study in familial psychology. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. That's the thing I really love is no matter what period you set your story in, there is still the universal aspect of families. You can have happy families, you can have broken families, you can have families that are a little bit mediocre and in between. You have responsibilities, you have standards, you have things that you need to uphold in your life, in your culture, in your family, in your group, and there's ways to fail, and there's ways to be seen as an embarrassment, and there's ways that you can just be born wrong in the eyes of people who are supposed to care for you and love you, and it's there's a lot of ways to play with it, and it's a very universal experience no matter the era that you're in, which is very cool. And I like that a lot. Clearly it's something I'm thinking a lot about, considering how much of the story of Immortal is going to be set so far back in time, but yeah. I mean, I don't know, Hannah, did anyone say this is a good book? I mean, it's one of the classics. It's still in rotation nowadays. They keep making movies about it. It's just one of the books you know about. Will this be up for the Patreon vote again, or will the second slot be for something else? I am gonna be honest. We're not very far into the book at all. We are 1/8 of the way through. And I don't know if we're gonna get 8 streams out of this one, gang. Why is it a classic? What makes it good? I would actually imagine that for the time that it was written in, describing such a wealthy family as being so awful and broken, and like showing that like just because you have good breeding doesn't make you a good person, could in and of itself be a reason for it to be a classic. Again, haven't read that many Victorian novels to say clearly any which way what for a fact made it into a classic. But the reason a lot of these books become classics is because they did something different, or they did something original, or they did something that broke the mold of what was already established in its time. The reason Sherlock Holmes is so incredibly popular even today is because it basically invented the murder mystery genre. Or like monster of the week genre, I guess. I don't know. I forget. I'm rambling and I don't know any of the words and I don't know any of the terminology. And yeah, I mean the reason Frankenstein is so incredibly famous is because it's not only one of the first like sci-fi novels, but it's also a real proper good horror novel. It was written by a woman and it wasn't romance, which was a big deal at the time. I think, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong. What else? The Time Machine is fantastic because it's a story about time travel from the Victorian era, and it's a short story, which is very good, and it actually predicted a couple things, apparently. I don't know. There's a reason for these things, but it does also kind of come down to luck. I'm sure there's plenty of very good Victorian novels that kind of fell to the wayside through history. But I'm not gonna go find them. Thanks, Phoenix, but I am talking a little bit out of my, a little out of my ass. Cicero counts as a classic and that fraud doesn't even know what a verb is. The of good breeding angle makes sense. The concepts which are critical are just so out of date that I can't relate at all. The concepts which are critiqued are just so out of date. Yeah, that's the thing. So like I can't really enjoy older films, and by older I mean like pre 2005. No, not really. Okay. A lot of movies which were incredibly famous for their time, thinking Rocky, Fight Club, actually American Psycho is still pretty good. What's the other, what are some other big ones? Breakfast Club, like stuff that became household names in the times that they were filmed and aired. I don't find very impressive. And the reason I don't find them very impressive is just because through time they have inspired so much more media that I then consumed before watching them, that I basically just don't find them impressive anymore because it's stuff I've seen already, which is silly because they did it first. That's why they're famous. That's why they're popular. They did it first. And it's a bit silly. But that is the way it is. And it's like, that's the same kind of logic for like classic novels in that, where it's like, It seems really basic, but that's because they were the first to do it, and it's really sick. Frankenstein and Sherlock hold up just fine, exactly. Forrest Gump, Doctor Strangelove. I've never seen Doctor Strangelove. Jurassic Park, yes. I think the first Rocky is a very good story of someone in rock bottom taking a chance to go up. The Matrix effect, yeah, the Matrix is definitely something like that. Imagine it like this, you see all the magic of metallurgy and shit, and then you look at cavemen making fire for the first time. Or some guy in ancient Mesopotamia getting bronze proper. Exactly. It's the same thing with your classic art. A lot of art from... what time periods? Yes, okay, so a lot of... If you're looking at, like, Greek art, right? Ancient Greek art. A lot of the basics are there for, like, art and structuring and style. Maybe Greek art is a bad example. What's the Renaissance doing? It's been a long time since I've, like, thought about art history. But yeah, that's a better example. So you look at things like Renaissance art, and oh, that's a great one. Okay, The Last Supper, by, give me a minute. You know the name of him, the guy, Michelangelo. One of the most incredible things about Michelangelo's art, aside from like all of it, right? Like all of it. It wasn't Michelangelo. It was Da Vinci. Michelangelo did the Sistine Chapel. But The Last Supper, one of the most impressive parts of it is its use of perspective. Because if you look into the background, you can very clearly see that they are in a room, and the room's angled in a way where you can see things moving. Like you can see the windows clearly move into a background space. And you have this idea of perspective, which has like now it's basic. For the time, insane. Which is also what separates a lot of medieval art from Renaissance art. The Renaissance was obviously, for many reasons, this renaissance in art and culture, but that's one of the things that they were vastly improving on, was this idea of anatomy, color, perspective, style, and this attempt to pursue realism in a way that, like, for example, medieval art never ever did. And even early Renaissance art still had trouble with, where you would have this sort of buttery skin and like this veiled oils that they would use, but then the actual perspective behind, like the backgrounds of it all, would be very flat. And so for an artist to, and I'm not saying Da Vinci was the first one to do it at all, but for artists of the time period to really pay attention to perspective and background and like focusing on like focal points, that was insane. That was incredible. And so like now it's like, yeah, that's the basic, that's the expected. But for the time, incredibly groundbreaking. And I feel like that's just how things work. It's really cool to like look at history and just see how so much of the stuff that we take for granted used to just not be a thing. What do you think of the hero's journey anyway? I think the hero's journey is so boring. And it's because I've just seen it done so many times. That's a great example. I am so turned off by Star Wars content, and I know this is a very controversial thing for me to say. I've never been into Star Wars, and it's because by the time I was watching the original trilogy for Star Wars, because like I'd never seen it. I think no one in my family had really like seen it, or if they had, it had been like decades ago. So like myself, my family, we sat down, I was like in high school at the time, and just watched through all 9 movies. Or I think it was, at the time there was like 7 or 8 movies out. And the original trilogy was such a basic story because it had popularized this idea of, I think it was the one that popularized the idea of like the hero's journey. It popularized so many tropes and ideas, and like you had the mentor, and then you had the villain who was big and dark and scary and brooding, and then he was the big bad, and it was just, by the time I watched it, I was just so bored because it was so basic. And then you had and then people think I'm weird for it, but it's like, I don't know, it just, I kind of watched it at like the worst possible time in my life to be watching it, because I was very critical of media that like I felt I'd already seen before, and that was like patient zero for stuff that was so revolutionary that every single thing after it tried to rip it off to some degree. So yeah, it's that's the thing, and that's my Star Wars. It's like, well, it was groundbreaking at the time, probably, kind of. Actually, wasn't it like a huge surprise that it was popular? I can't remember. Anyway, it was before my time. The hero's journey came before Star Wars. I forget, there was an author who popularized the hero's journey. And it was based off of a lot of stories around the world. Like this idea of all of these cultural myths, folk tales. The 1949 book, Hero with a Thousand Faces. American mythologist Joseph Campbell. I know that name. Was that really... Who was Joseph Campbell? That name is so familiar. It's probably because, like, he's this extremely well-established. Literature, comparative mythology. God, I wish I could study what he did. Okay. I definitely... Okay, I see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it was Joseph Campbell, 1950s. That popularized the idea of the hero story. That carried through into today, even, where people are purposefully creating stories built around the idea of the hero's journey, which is fine. If that's what you want to do, if that's the story you want to tell, that's fine. Me personally, I'm a little bored with it. There could be ways to interestingly reinterpret it, for sure. I'm not saying there aren't. Yeah. I feel like there's gotta be other things. Let's keep Hannah yapping. Yeah, I know, I'm a little over time now, come on. Ain't Star Wars biggest just also the setting and setting and shit? It's a false model of a story because even Star Wars doesn't follow it. Anyway, you're gonna hate my game then because it's sort of the exploration of making... That's what I'm saying. I probably won't. That's the thing. It's very much a personal bias, and I'm very aware that it is a personal bias, which is why I would never judge a piece of media outside of like my personal enjoyment for including that kind of content. And I mean, the exploration of the makings of what a hero is can be a very interesting concept. I think that can be because you're exploring a concept. So there's multiple ways you can take it. I'm saying the hero's journey is a step-by-step guide on how to make a story, and it's like it falls into the idea of like you have the hero's journey, you have the MacGuffin, you have the mentor character, you have the female love interest who's only there because they are female and also a love interest. Like, there are a lot of very tired tropes in media that I recognize, and as soon as I recognize them, I lose interest. And that is only in modern media that's being made today. I feel like that is only ever made in like these massive Hollywood blockbusters that didn't really put a lot of thought into the writing. That's the thing. My big thing is like I enjoy good writing because I like to think about it. I like to think like, how in the hell did they make this? And then when it comes to these kind of tropes and this kind of step-by-step of how like stories should work, that's the kind of thing that like peeves me off. But again, that's all personal opinion. And a lot of people are allowed to have different opinions than me. If you really like the mentor trope, that's fantastic. You can explore the mentor trope. If you... like, that's the thing. Like, just don't do something in a way that is boring. Because the only way to do something in that specific way that's boring is because you didn't put a lot of thought into it and just put a template in. That's the thing. It's a template. They're all templates. Don't put a template in. Explore the template. Does that make sense? Sorry, that took a very... Do you see why I write scripts? That took me a long time, a long bit of rambling to get to my actual point. Good thing my main character's aromatic thing. You're taking the wrong points. You're taking the wrong points from this. It's fine to have a... hang on. It's fine to have a love interest in a piece of media. Lots of pieces of media have love interests. That's not what I'm saying, is that you must never have a love interest in your piece of media. I'm saying do it in a way that is well thought out and interesting. Don't just have them in there because that's the template. Do it in a way that is interesting, not just to me, but to you as well. And then I guarantee your whatever it is you're making is going to be amazing. Because if you really put any kind of thought into it, it is going to show in the writing. It's going to show in the plot. It's going to show in the passion for the piece that you have. I guarantee. Just don't put in a template for the sake of putting in a template. That is my only thing. Love interests are fine. Mentors are fine. Villains are fine. Hero's journey are fine. Just don't put the template in for the sake of the template. That is... I have said it 3 times now. I'm not going to say it again. Please don't assume that I hate, like, these things because they exist. I know I did just say, like, previously, like, oh, if I see them, I get bored. Not what I'm saying. You can have a mentor character and have it be interesting. You can have a love interest and have it be interesting. Those things necessarily don't make it better. I'm repeating myself. Anyway. I'm going to stop talking and drink some water. Okay. I'm sorry. I got a bit heated there at the end. This is not what the stream was supposed to be about. And that's definitely not what Wuthering Heights is about. You know what? I think I got this. It's very different, but thank you for sharing mine. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. That was very unfiltered, and a lot of it is personal opinion, so please don't take it entirely to heart. If it was something that I really felt super strongly about, it would already be in a video, or would currently be made into a video. I would be making it into a video, so, like, please don't worry. And then Hannah, go to bed. Yeah, I think I do need to go to bed. When I start ranting and raving about stuff I don't really know what I'm talking about, I think maybe it's time. Okay. You should make a stream about writing and tropes. I could do that. I could make a proper video about it too, but that would take 6 months. This is better than Wuthering Heights. I'm very entertained by the ranting. Oh, good. Yay. Okay. Good night, everyone. Much to think about, much to consider. Please ignore the last 15 minutes of the stream. The audience don't know the plot is coming. The audience shouldn't. Yes, I like the way you think. That's a cool thing to say. Wait, Hannah, no, Red from Overly Sarcastic Productions will see you. Damn, right. The copyright. Explode. Good night, guys. Good night. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you very much for joining me. The poll for next week's stream will be up tomorrow on the Patreon. Thank you very, very much for joining. And yes. Be well. Be good. Huzzah. Bye-bye. Good night. Bye.